Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Treaty 1 and Dakota Nation's territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning, and introducing the panel, Mr. Harvey Diamond to my left, and by Zoom, Mr. Robert Hutchins. The recording secretary is Michelle Nepen, and representing the city of Winnipeg from the assessment department is Brittany Santucci. This morning we'll be hearing an application for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that the applicant or the assessor make at the hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that the comparisons of assessments of property are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at the hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant. Following the swearing in, we will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the other applicant may have, and then will be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application is brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item in the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor, and then we can swear in Mr. Story or from him, either one.
Good morning, Ms. Assessor. Can you state your full name for the record, please? Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Mr. Applicant, can you state your full name for the record, please?
Jared Story.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
So according to the docket, we'll deal with 1868 Portage Avenue, and we will turn the floor over to Ms. Santucci.
Thank you. This is file number 21-153, roll number 07-020-158-000, and the address is 1868 Portage Avenue. So my recommendation today was to maintain the 2022 assessed value of $384,000.
Thank you. Mr. Story, you have comments in this regard?
We are simply requesting that the assessment be confirmed at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
Mr. Hutchins, any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there a request for burden of proof?
There was, but since we were confirming it, I didn't know if I should go through the whole process of that.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Ms. Santucci.
I didn't know if we would go through the process of that if we were confirming it today.
Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to the next property, which is 227 Provencher Boulevard. Ms. Santucci, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 21-321, roll number 06093-460-230, address 227 Provencher Boulevard. So currently we have this listed as a medical office clinic. It was built in 1964, and we have Gross and leasable area of 21,522 square feet. So if you turn to my page 2, this property is located in St. Boniface on Provencher and the corner, well, it's set back a bit from Provencher. So just to let you know, this was the old St. Boniface courthouse, police station. So we have it listed as medical currently because that's what we were told it was going to be converted into. But as of right now, I think there's still some discrepancy on what has been converted and what is still there, essentially jail cells and whatnot. So I only have the one exterior photo at the bottom. On my page 3, I have the request for income and expense. They've submitted mailers. This property sold from the city to the owner in 2014 for $680,000. So 4 years prior to the reference date. Currently, the property is 100% vacant and listed for sale by the owner. I think the owner might occupy a small office in the building, or at least at one point he did. I'm not sure if it is anymore. So for the land information, just to let you know the value that I'm using today, it actually went from income because the income was lower to land. So the value based on land was 25,371 square feet times a net rate of $56.17 per square foot to come up with the 1,425,000. So I have some land sale comparables, but I did want to point out that while I have included land sale comparables on page 3, and then I have photos of them from page 4 to 5. On my page 6, I've included an income workup, which was close to what the land was. Essentially, this would probably be more applicable than the land value that it reverted to. So on my page 6, we've applied to the main floor, which is the 13,490 square feet, $9.91 per square foot. To the basement space, which is 8,032 square feet, we've applied $5.50. So that gives us a blended rate of $7.68 per square foot. Essentially below market rents due to the fact that this hasn't been fully converted into a medical office yet. For the vacancy loss, we've applied 15%. There has been vacancy issues since the owner bought this. For expenses, this is the 2%, shortfall $7 per square foot, and a capitalization rate of 8.05%. So overall, our income value is $1,420,000. If you turn to my page 7, I've included typical medical comparable rents. So 25 comparables, many of them are in St. Boniface. I have an average of $13.49, median of $13.28. So as you can see, the market rents for medical space are much higher than the $8.91 of applied. For basement rents, I've included 17 comparables. The average is $9.09 and the median is $9. And for this property, we've applied the $5.50. So again, below market for typical basement space. On my page 8 is just the income value summary. Page 9 would be capitalization rates, model derived. Page 10 is my Municipal Assessment Act excerpt. And then on page 11, we have the income and expense questionnaire that was submitted by the owner. So just to go over here, they have some parking. They have not made any income off of it. It's fully owner occupied in the sense of, at that time, I think, again, he was occupying a small office space. Otherwise, the majority of the building was vacant. On page 12, again, just income and expense for the vacancy there, basement, 24 offices. Page 13, again, I'm not sure if they had a tenant or if they had crossed it out, so just go with fully vacant. On my page 15, I wanted to point out just the floor plans. So I I reviewed just to confirm that we had the proper main floor leasable and kind of what was currently functioning in this building. Like what could be medical space. I couldn't really wrap my head around how a courthouse, could be converted, but it does look like they have, for the majority of the main floor, there is separate offices. The one space I'll point out is that space that's about 28 feet by 44 feet. Those are the jail cells. So I'm not quite sure how those will be converted, but the majority of the main floor does seem like it could be converted to medical space. The offices are not obviously jail cell size, and there's washrooms and stairwells and whatnot, main lobby entrances. So approximately 9% of the total leasable area of this building is that 28 by 44, that jail cell area, which is about 1,232 square feet. So for my page 16, I've included the basement space. So this here shows there's a kitchen down there, a lounge, a gym, mechanical room, some storage, some other office space, garage. So just to show that it's not necessarily substandard basement that we wouldn't apply a rate to, there is leasable space down there. Okay, so on my page 17, I've included some sales for sale advertisements I found online. I'm not necessarily using these for the sale price because I don't understand how they came up with the sale price, but I wanted to include it for photos of the subject property. And then it just states like the property condition and what kind of has been done to the property since the owner has taken over. So on my page 17, it shows that the property's in good condition. There's 2 brand new boilers, some suggestions of, how it could be repurposed, buildings well engineered, just sort of things like that I was looking at these. So on my page 18, again, there's just some exterior photos to show the parking area. It is more of a bi-level basement, I guess. It's kind of raised off the ground. Page 19, again, just photos of the interior and exterior. Page 20, we have some more exterior aerial photos and some interior ones. And then page 21 shows that jail cell area I was talking about. So if we flip to page 23, again, another sale advertisement, just confirms there's an occupancy permit for the full area of the 21,522 square feet, just to show that basement space would be included in leasable. And then this one has some, I think, better photos of the interior. So again, page 24 is just exterior photos. Page 25 shows the entrance. So as you can see, just like a typical open space lobby. On page 26, some of the interior space, office space. Page 27, again, office space, the gym downstairs, some bathroom space. So it's not totally, I think, out of the realm to think that this could be converted to something else based on these photos. Except again, if you look on page 28, there's those pictures of the jail cells. Not sure how they would convert that space, but a majority of the building is, I think, convertible to some sort of use. And then on page 29, just some photos of mechanical room and then the utility garage at the bottom. So one of the things that came up, and this is very recent, on page 30 was historical resources nominated list. So I watched this hearing online just to kind of get an idea of what happened. This property going forward, the owner appealed the heritage status, and it was, from what I understand, his appeal was denied and it will go forward. And essentially there'll be a decision. There's no date set. I couldn't find anything. Essentially it's not on the historical resources list yet, but it's going forward to be still heard at a further date. So some of the notes I took from the hearing, just from listening to the owner, was he doesn't wish to demo the building. still is what he wants to do is create a medical center there. One of the main issues he had with historical nominations was that it was going to cost more money to renovate it. I guess he has to replace the roof. There's some plumbing and HVAC that needs to be dealt with. So his issue mostly was with the inflated costs he thought would come from this decision. But otherwise, he said he purchased and his intended use was to renovate this to be a medical center. And it was to deal with natural possible. I guess that was the tenant who was essentially going to go in here. So some of the things I took from his statements on the building were the building is optimal for a medical center, he stated in this hearing. Very little needs to be done aside from meeting code. So handicapped, anything that needs to be changed to example, like door widths, higher handrails. I think there's a Ruffton elevator. I think it's exterior though. It already has a lab ready to go, he stated in the hearing. Essentially like a Dynacare could move into it. There's a huge space downstairs for physiotherapy, which is referred to as the gym space. And then upstairs, you know, there's waiting rooms, there's the lobby. He states that like there's office space that's, you know, good to go. And then he said one of the benefits also of that brutalist architecture was the smaller windows for privacy during medical appointments. So it sounds like the owner is still focused on it becoming a medical building, which is to post the heritage status. So on page 34, I've included the Winnipeg Free Press article that talks about how the appeal was denied and they're still exploring the possible heritage designation that hasn't been applied yet. So, the one thing I'd like to point out is they did note, the city councilors, that heritage designation is not necessarily a super negative thing. You know, they can apply for grants once they have it. He doesn't intend to demolish the building. So I didn't quite think of it as a huge negative when valuing this just yet. And the fact of the matter is it hasn't been designated yet. So on my page 37, I've included my Board of Revision addenda. So again, we've all went through this. I'm not gonna go over it too much. The main thing is just the non-recoverables. We're using 2% now. Again, just we found the management that was removed was being recovered. So I'll keep it pretty simple with that. My recommendation today, so I originally had to maintain the 2020 assessed value of the $1,425,000, but I do think it'd be more applicable. And obviously it's a very close value if we use the $1,420,000, which is used by the income workup I have on my page 6. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions of the assessor?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, I guess firstly, and thank you for that, but much of that presentation was post-reference material, is that correct?
I'm not speaking to any of the values, I'm just using the photos.
Well, but you're using,
And it's not sold.
okay.
Yeah,
well,
I was just using the photos for reference of what the interior looks like as of the reference. Like,
so the free press articles, the hearing, and the 2 sales listings, so that's all post-reference, correct?
it would be post-reference, but it wouldn't be towards the value, it would just be towards the current condition and status. Like it doesn't affect the rental rate or anything.
There's information contained there that would not be known to a purchaser at the reference date. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Have you visited this property?
I have not visited it.
Okay, so I heard you say that that it's in good condition in the interior, but that's based on marketing photos that you saw online and not based on an inspection by the city or notes that the city has on this property. Is that fair to say?
The last inspection we had was when it was sold. So someone was in the property. It wasn't me. I read through their inspection notes and there was nothing in there that said it was in like rough condition sort of thing. It was just mostly the fact that it was a courthouse, jail, and it was going to be converted to medical.
Okay, and it is empty space, so it's not currently a medical office, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is completely 100% vacant and has been since at least 2014. Is that fair?
It's my understanding that essentially the owner might occupy a very small office space. I'm not sure if he does. There's a permit, but I could not confirm he was there or not.
Okay, so you mentioned the historical designations pending. Now, presumably, should that go through, and that would have been something that would have been known, Mr. Chair, to a prudent purchaser, it would have been a reasonable assumption to think that the old civic courthouse in St. Boniface would presumably come up for nomination. Now, just to be very clear, you mentioned that it does prevent demolition of the property, that designation, but it also protects certain what are called CDEs, character defining elements, and it places a caveat on title, correct? So that would be a value negative to an owner, would it not?
Depending on what they wanted to do with the property.
All right, that's fine. So in terms of the land to plan area, so you're saying that the value that you've determined based on the income is what you're using now, but the assessed value is actually based on the land?
Yes, it went out as the land value.
Okay, so let's talk about the land first. So firstly, this property is not developable without demolishing the improvement. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And if you are doing a land value for an improved property, we should make an adjustment for demolition, should we not? Okay, and demolition typically, say, would be between $5 to $10 per square foot. For older buildings from the 1960s, we would add an extra $2 or $3 per square foot for potentially hazardous materials. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look at your sales comps for land. You've used a rent of $56.17. And how did you determine that net rate per square foot?
That's just the modeled rent, but I'm not using, I've just included this for what was sent out, but based on my presentation today, I'm defending the income value.
Okay, but it's within $5,000, so.
Yes.
Okay, and just to be very clear, all of these land sales were sold as vacant land and they did have development potential. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and then there's a varying size difference for some of them. So.
Right. Okay. So is it fair to say then that the first three would probably be the most comparable to our subject?
Based on land size, yes.
Well, yeah. Comp 6 and 7 are almost 10 times smaller.
Yes, they're very similar.
And comp 8 and comp 5 are the same piece of property.
Yes.
Okay, and those were sold with the intention to develop multifamily, either condos or apartments for all of those. Is that correct?
I would assume some of them have been developed since. Yeah. I cannot say what is currently on these parcels.
Okay. All right. So if we look then at your first three, then that 56.17 per square foot is extremely high.
Depending on location, right? This is located right on Provencher, so.
Are you suggesting that these
it's
are
a very
not?
good location.
Okay, and you're suggesting that these are not very good locations?
They're good locations as well, but this is definitely a prime real estate.
Okay.
I would consider it.
So you would, okay. That's interesting. All right, so, but again, those were all sold as vacant with development potential and no consideration for demolition or remediation costs. Fair?
Yes.
Okay, and then on page 6, again, when the model uses rents for office, medical, dental, typically those spaces rent at a premium because there's a higher degree of fit up in terms of special equipment, things like Medigas, things like that, right?
Yes.
But we don't have any of that in this space. Is that fair to say?
No, and that's why my rent applied is much lower than the average market rents that included on the
Okay, so on page 7, those market rents, I noticed that you've used 2110 Main Street a number of times, 1, 2, 3, about 6 times. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Have you visited that property?
I have been in there, but just for business assessment, not for reviewing the building or anything.
So then you're aware that firstly it's across from Kildonan Park Golf Course,
Yes.
and it has been renovated.
Yes.
Okay. And it's actively a medical center. Okay. Now, in terms of, there's one that caught my eye that you used a number of times, 400 Taché. That's right across the street from the hospital, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do you think that somebody might pay a premium to be right across from the hospital if they're renting medical space?
Yes, but again, this is also located not far from the hospital. So I included those rents because they were very close to the subject property.
That's fine. So in terms of what you're calling basement here,
Yes.
these are basement offices,
Yes, they would be basement spaces.
but then 10 of the 17 are either on the second or third floor. Is that correct?
Probably included that on my chart, but I have verified unless I included that.
Well, so for 1483
Actually,
permanent,
might have included the wrong chart. No, unfortunately, so some of these are basement space. They just have different numbers applied to them. I've been in Buffalo and I've been confirmed these basement spaces.
are you
My
you're
floors
sure?
are just wrong, yes.
Floors are okay. All right. All right. But now our basement would be considered storage space. Most
Well, I wouldn't consider it storage space after listening to what is currently down there and the fact that it's full height ceilings and it's leasable space.
So you're saying that it's leasable, and is that based on the fact that there's an occupancy permit?
It's just based on what is down there in the floor plan. It's like my floor plan on page 16 shows there's office space, there's a garage, there's gyms, there's I don't understand how that would all be just considered storage space, but.
Okay, but it's based on the quality of the.
And again, these are averages for market of $9 and I'm using $5.50.
But a storage rent is typically between $3 and $4. Is that not?
I
fair to
don't
say?
consider this a storage rent.
All right. Now, typically, the city applies 25% for long-term chronic vacancy. So why is this only 15%?
That is what it's currently adjusted to. It could potentially be adjusted upwards.
And that cap rate is modeled.
That is modeled based on age, many factors that go into it, but yes, which I think is a fair capitalization rate for this property.
Okay. All right. And so if we just look here at your office comps, this would put it slightly above the 80th percentile. Now, just based on what we know about this property, the fact that it's effectively gutted, it has deferred maintenance, it has a pending heritage designation, and there's been a history of issues with this property. You think that slight adjustment to 8.05 is reasonable?
I think it's reasonable for this property. I don't think the interior main floor and basement has been completely gutted.
Well, it is good. So there's nothing in there.
There's no furniture or anything, but from my understanding, walls and there's doors and there's flooring and there's
Walls and doors
ceilings
and floors, but there's some water damage from a leaking roof that requires over $200,000. It's built of tar and gravel.
Yes.
Largest roof. Okay. All right. Now, in terms of the expenses, the management expense, can we agree that the expenses that are being paid annual are being borne solely by the owner? They're not being recovered?
I would agree that all expenses are paid just solely by the owner for this property.
Okay.
It's not recovered.
Now, you said that the heritage designation, that there are grants that can be applied for. So currently there are two programs in the city of Winnipeg. There's the Gail Parvin Hammerquist Fund, and then there's the Heritage Conservation Tax Credit Program. Are you familiar with those programs?
I'm not familiar with them.
Okay, so you're not familiar that the tax credit program has been fully subscribed for many years now. You're not aware of that?
Okay. I didn't look into it because it's technically not designated yet, so.
Right. But it is pending, so any sort of work that would be applied for would likely be stalled pending that designation, given the fact that it's in play. And that's, even though that is post-reference, that does speak to legal permissibility. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so he would know that these things would have had to been done ahead of time as well, with the roof and whatnot, so.
Right. Okay, I think those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Mr. Diamond?
I think that after all the questions that Mrs. Story asked, I think there's much left for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Santucci, first thing, I'm trying to get a picture of the history here. So the current owner purchased the property in 2014. And from my understanding, their intent was to renovate the property into a medical center. Is that correct?
That was the owner's intent.
Okay. Were there permits taken out over the over the years to do that?
I could not find any permits that even just started or proceeded for this property. There was only the occupancy permit I saw for the owner to just occupy some office space.
Okay, so is it fair to say that the owner has occupied some space in that building for medical purposes?
I don't think it was for medical purposes. I think he just occupied a very small office for personal, so it wasn't really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So do you have the history of an assessor visiting the property and making a decision to assess this property as a medical clinic?
Yeah, so the person who would have went in 2015, one of my colleagues, they were the ones that converted it over to essentially what the owner said they were going to renovate it to. They had adjusted things, made adjustments based on their seeing the visual space. That's why, again, we've adjusted these. These aren't typical rents we would apply if this was an actual fully functioning medical space. But yeah, I just read through the notes and went over what they had done.
Okay, so just to be clear, an assessor visited the property, possibly met with the owner and determined at that time that it would be assessed as a medical center with medical rental rates applied for the valuation. What was the owner there and discussed it with the assessor? Would you have any notes on that?
I have that the owner went through it with the assessor. There wasn't great detail of what they spoke about, just of what changes were made in our system, and
okay.
The property was never appealed until this year. So
yeah, okay. So it was established as a medical center with medical rates, and that began effective. Would it be January 1st, 2016, or?
I think we did it back to around the sale date. I don't think it was effective for 20. Like we didn't. I didn't see any notes of sending up supplemental, but
okay.
I'm not gonna.
Okay. So you just stated that the owner did not appeal that methodology for a medical center until this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so everything would have been changed in 15 and this was the first appeal.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm a little bit confused here about the current physical condition. I believe from your evidence that the property is now listed for sale?
It's currently been listed for sale for a while.
Okay, so it's up for sale, but then you stated that there has been lab facilities and a physio center installed in the property?
No, it was just when I watched the hearing for the heritage status, the owner spoke to what could be there.
Okay.
I was trying to get an idea of what that basement space / main floor space, how it would be, as they said, easily converted into medical.
Oh, I see. Okay. Now, regarding that historical designation, who would have made that decision to apply for that? Obviously, the owner, I don't know if he was caught by surprise, but is against that designation. Can you explain how that process would work?
I think the city nominated it, and people will then, when I watched the appeal, there was people that were there for it, but there was people like the owner and another person were there against that designation.
Okay.
But I think it had to do with the city's Department of Nomination, and then.
So, like for instance, the Historical Society might have applied for that designation. Yeah. Okay.
It wasn't the owner yet; he was not for it at all.
Yeah. Okay. And just to be clear, Mr. Story came up with this questioning. Maybe you answered, you didn't know, but so the historical designation would benefit the owner in the way of applying for grants. Is that correct?
There's the option that he could. I'm not sure how that would work though, because I don't really know much about that portion of it.
Okay,
The owner, in the owner's mind, it wouldn't benefit.
yeah, okay,
Cost would be inflated.
I think Mr. Story has more information on that. I'll ask him when, during his presentation. And, as far as you know, so there have been no permits taken out recently, and the property currently is listed for sale, for resale.
Yes.
Okay. So basically it's, physically, is it fair to say it's not a medical center now?
Currently, no, I would say it's like there's office space, but medical, there wouldn't be the proper sinks and things that would go into a medical center. I would say if anything, it would just be like office space and then a basement space, but no, I wouldn't say it couldn't function as a medical space.
Okay, yeah. So if you visited today, what would you, no, I won't even ask you that. That's okay, yeah. We'll leave that one alone. Okay, so it's currently not a medical center. It's assessed as one. Then my last question, I guess, is you did bring in the land comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
So you're using the land valuation to support the income and valuation. Is that fair?
Well, yes, so originally it was sent out as land, and then I just felt that based on, the fact that the owner does not intend to demolish it or redevelop the space in the sense of like removing the building, that's why I chose to focus on the income workup on my page 6.
Okay, so today so originally the assessment value was based on a land valuation that overrode the income valuation. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're very close, but yes.
Yeah. Okay, but today you're presenting both as evidence. Is that fair?
Yeah, so I did want to include how we came up with the original value that was mailed out to the owner, and then provide evidence to that. And then I also provided the income. Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Ms. Santucci, this is a very interesting property. You've concluded the value, I guess, based on land value, and you've also, done a income presentation.
Yes.
So I guess they could have come along and said, well, it's not going to be a medical, office or something like that. It's going to be, who knows,
Yes.
Anything. So, I mean, is there a difference, in doing the value for a medical building or just an office building, or, it's just a hypothetical question. So to add a little bit, I noticed that the property itself is 25,000 square feet. Okay, so and the plan is only 13. So you have quite a bit of land there.
There's the basement space,
Yeah. Okay, but I'm just looking at the pictures, and I haven't been there to pay any fines, and maybe years ago I did. But is there a walkway through there or something like that, or is there more? If you're looking at the garage part, is there more land to the left, if anything, or is the property right in the middle?
The property's from my page 15. It's pretty situated in, I would say, the middle. I don't know if there would be more space, just because there's only about. I don't know if they would take away from some of that sort of landscaping that's there. They could essentially put more on the property, but I don't.
So a couple more questions came up. He bought this property, in 2014 for $680,000. It's a nice building.
Yes.
I mean, I'm looking at the boiler. I mean, it's worth all kinds of money. There's 6 garages there.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's got a lot of potential. So it's very difficult to put a value on it, whether it's land value or you go the other way.
So that's why I think even with my rents that I've applied, they may not necessarily reflect medical, but they are downwards from medical or let's say just regular office space. Like what I've valued it at today, like $8.91 is lower than what you could get in that area for a medical or just regular office space. So I tried to, like the person who previously adjusted this as well had looked at that and said, well, typically, in the current state, it wouldn't go for exactly what is available in the market, but we're going to downwards adjust that. And some of the parameters may change if it's an office, but for the majority, it would not. I think the income value I have here could be easily met for this office space, but.
It'll be interesting to hear Mr. Story's value. So I think we'll move on to
Mr. Chair, excuse me. Could I ask one more question arising?
yes.
Regarding your land question, Ms. Santucci, I'm looking on your aerial photos. So the subject property, what page am I on? Page 2. The subject property is only the building itself, that land to the bottom, that belongs to a different roll number, or am I wrong here?
Yeah, so the land in front of it doesn't belong to them.
Okay, so the actual blue outline is the subject property.
That is the assessed, yes, the land.
Okay, and that's basically that's the perimeter of the building itself, basically. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's some vacant space in front of the building, and then towards the parking garage area on the side of where the jail cells are, there's some vacant space there.
Okay. So the bottom picture showing where the sign is, and then there's a park leading. I assume that the building is at the back of that picture. Is that right?
It's actually, it's set back off the launching.
Yeah. Okay. So that doesn't belong to the subject property, or that's from the side where that garage is. Is that right?
The exterior photo is facing off of Provencher and it's looking towards the property in the back. So yeah, I don't have a picture coming from the garage side.
Okay, but that land, the bottom picture on page 2 with the signage, that's actually sitting on somebody else's property?
That's just the fronting on Provencher. I think it's owned, I think that one's owned by the city.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Okay, just a couple of things that have come up here that I want to address very quickly, so we're all very clear. We've just mentioned the property line. This property is effectively built up to the parcel boundaries. There's no excess capacity for developing that side on the right that came into question. That's a driveway that drives down into those garages where the police cars used to be in those bays. The civic square in front is owned by the city. That encompasses the Festival de Voyageurs building, as well as the old fire hall, which is not viewable here. At the bottom photo, I believe that's just a Google Street View, because unless you visit the property, you can't actually see it from Google Street View unless you go to Longevin or Demoulin. So just to be very clear, there's not excess capacity for development on the site as it stands now. Also, it's come up a couple of times. There's office in this property. There is no office finish in this property whatsoever. The owner does not occupy an office. There's no lab. I was there on October 7th. There's an occupancy permit, but that's for the sole purpose of getting insurance on the building. You need to have an occupancy permit to have insurance, otherwise you've got a vacant building. So just to be very clear on those points going forward. It's an interesting question to know what happens to the valuation parameters if it's an office, but then also what happens if it's an art center, what happens if it's a museum. You can see that the use will affect the income potential. So that's an interesting conversation. Now, just to set the table, if I may, the history of this property is interesting, and it has been market tested. So it's not quite as great as it may seem. In 2007, this property was deemed surplus by the city of Winnipeg. They had open houses and they were accepting offers up until 2010. There were no takers. There was no interest in this property whatsoever. In 2012, the city determined that property ought to be demolished, and they put it up for sale for $470,000 with the condition that it had to be demolished and multifamily had to be developed on the site. There were no takers. There was a residents group who formed, the head of which was a property developer, and they made an offer. They offered $1 for this property, provided that they had their time to do due diligence and to check the viability of the property. Well, that deal fell through. So now, from 2007 up until 2014, there was one offer on that property, and it was for $1, and it didn't go through. So this property has been market tested. It's been marketed by the city. The city has said that it ought to be demolished. The community said we don't want it demolished. So my client, and again, this is a new client for me, so it did come up as well that it hasn't been appealed. This is brand new for us. He's very, very new to us. So we haven't reviewed this up until this year. So just so we're clear on that. He paid $680,000. But of that $680,000, $200,000 went to the improvements surrounding the property, which are not part of his property. So effectively, that sale price is a little bit overstated based on the fact that $200,000 of that sale went towards it's called the Sculpture Garden. They have events there. It's the old St. Boniface City Town Square, effectively. So that's the history of the sales value. There's one sale, and it's somewhat overstated here. So, okay, again, this property is built in the brutalist style. It's built in 1964, single story. There's 13,490 square feet on the main, 8,032 square feet in the basement. And again, it is best known as the former St. Boniface Police Station and Courthouse. Now, all of the elements of that original use are still there. I've visited it. The jail cells are there, the solitary confinement, the visitors booths. Now, what's interesting about that is, yes, this property can be redemised and repurposed, to be certain. But the question is the economic viability of converting that space. We've got masonry walls with rebar. This is not stick frame construction where you can simply punch out drywall. This is reinforced jail building and police station. So it's a very nice building. It's a famous Winnipeg architect, to be certain. However, the economic viability of it going forward is compromised by the fact that it is a purpose-built building for a very, very distinct purpose that makes it very difficult to repurpose, which I think is potentially why participants in the market said, no, this is not economically feasible. Okay, so we do recognize that substantial renovations and capital work are required in order to bring it to a basic leasable standard. I observed that there is water damage throughout. The entirety of the roof is an original 1964 built up tar and gravel roof. I know a little bit about this. I have one on my house, so I know when he said that when he told me the cost to repair it, I understand that they are the most expensive roofs to fix, because when you have tar and gravel, when you have a leak, it's very difficult to pinpoint where that leak is coming from. So you have to generally do the entirety of the roof with torch on. So, however, with this heritage designation up in the air, the owner is reticent to put more money in. He has replaced the boilers. That's a capital improvement that needed to be done, but he's reticent to take substantial steps forward and major capital improvements until we know what the future of this building might be. A big part of that is the heritage designation going forward. So I did notice that in some instances, the carpeting has been completely stripped to avoid further complications by way of mold, mildew. And again, we've mentioned the specific use that makes the space very difficult to demise. It is an irregular shape. It's situated at the back of this parcel. It has a Provencher address, but it is truly on the corner of Langevin and Dumoulin. That's fair to say. So it was interesting when I was reviewing the assessment department's value based on land, I made reference to this. The value that they're using is $56 per square foot. That's inordinately high. When we see development-ready parcels in this area, they tend to range somewhere between $19 to $30 per square foot, but we haven't factored in the demolition costs. However, I've done my own calculation, and it is within about 15% of my income valuation when we take into account that $56 per square foot is not reasonable. It should range somewhere between 25 to 30, and then we should also recognize that the demolition and remediation are essential to bringing this to a development ready capacity. Now, if we're only looking at income, that's okay too. So, in terms of the potential market rent, this is not a medical office. Medical offices tend to rent at a premium because they have special systems, special equipment, and the fit up effectively is just it's more expensive to an owner, and that has to be reflected in the rent. This is not a medical office. This is stripped down office space at best from the 1960s. So I looked at the market to determine what a reasonable but theoretical market rent would be if the money was spent to bring this space to what we'll call a leasable standard. So I've looked at these 5 comps. I've got 2 on Portage that I think are very good. The first one is at the lower end of the pharmacy scale, which I think is reasonable. The second is a constituency office. I like that one. I've been involved in leasing of a constituency office in the past. I know that typically you look for space that's finished to a lesser degree. So we've used that one. There's an educational support building, which I think is appropriate. It's again, early 60s build, though a little bit out of the area, but would generally be considered comparable for participants looking for lower quality office space. We have on comp 4, we have some older space, and then or utility, we'll call it utility grade office space. I think that's more than fair to say that this subject would be competing with utility grade office. So with all that taken into consideration, we come to an average rent of $587 with a median of $597. So our theoretical rent that we would apply with the presumption that this space would be in reasonable leasable condition, and after all the work capital outlays were put forward to bring it to that standard, we believe that $6 per square foot is more than reasonable. And as per general practice, we've used $3 for half of the main floor rent for the basement. So that gives us a net market rent per annum of $105.36. Now, in terms of vacancy, it is typical that the higher end of the vacancy model for long-term chronic vacancy is 25%. This building has been substantially vacant since at least, I'll call it between 2007 2010. The courts, there was a need for bilingual court services, so they maintained, they used that office until 2014, until they moved down to the La Vérendrye Center de Muron in the middle of 2014. But since at least 2014, it has been 100% vacant. There's nobody occupying any of this space. So we've applied the top end of the vacancy allowance at 25%. Now, Mr. Chair, I know that you've all heard our piece on non-recoverables. Would you like me to go into it in great detail, or would you like a sort of a more?
Not at this moment.
No? Okay, so you're aware of it. I can leave it as is. You have our submission. We do maintain that a 2% structural reserve is appropriate. 5% for the non-recoverables is appropriate in the competent management and ownership of income-producing properties. And we do have our study. You're all well familiar with it, so I'll leave it at that and ask that carries forward to the balance of the properties on our docket today. In terms of cap rates, and you have our cap rate information in my brief. Of course, this is a suburban office. Typically, we would suggest that suburban offices should range somewhere between 6.25 to 7.5 before specific adjustments. And some of the factors that we might adjust for would be the ability for appreciation in rents, age, location, tenant strength, additional income potential, the current quality of the building, the optimal building size, design and layout, and external influences, not excluding the legal permissibility of the potential highest and best use of the property. So if our typical suburban office cap rates should fall somewhere in the range of 6.25% to 7.5%, we believe that a cap rate of no less than 8.5% be applied to this property. So if you follow me to page 13, based on what I think is somewhat optimistic view of this property from a market perspective, and based on what we've seen over the last 10 years at least, in terms of the market behavior, we believe that a value of no more than $419,000 is appropriate for the 2022 tax cycle. Based on the April 1, 2018 reference date, we do respectfully submit that a value of $419,000 be applied for taxation purposes. Now, if you follow me to page 16, I have my shots of the property. Again, I toured this property with the owner. I've had a couple of conversations with him. I have a very good handle on this, so I'm happy to discuss, but you can see the interiors starting on page 19. Again, purpose-built. This is a civic style building. The area has not been demised. It's stripped down. There's not much there. Page 21, you can see the clerk's counter, as is typical in many civic buildings. Looks like a police station or a DMV or some such thing. By far the showpiece is on page 22. It's a very small area, but that is the former courtroom. Okay, page 23, you start to see the quality of the interior. Page 24, you can see cinder block walls. It's sort of sometimes minimal fenestration, so there's not a lot of windows. That's whether that's pro or con. I guess for a medical office that might be positive, but in general, the general sentiment is that more windows in an office space is probably a good thing. Page 26, you can see this is stripped down to shell space. Page 28 shows where the carpet has been ripped out due to water coming through the ceilings. Page 29 shows the actual water streaking. So again, I've done a full inspection of this property. I've included the photos. There's also a number of vaults throughout this property. Those are typically difficult to remove. That's something of an issue. They are purpose-built. Page 37 is interesting. It sort of mirrors the courtroom, but this is the former police locker room, actually. So now, of course, we should talk about page 41. You see the jails. That's where that begins, and you can see the hallways are extremely narrow. As they stand now, it would be fairly difficult to use this for anything other than storage, and they are intact. We've got the toilets and sinks inside the cells. We've got the page 42 is very difficult to show, but without context. But that is a solitary confinement room. Again, it is all masonry with reinforced rebar. Page 44, we've got a fellow standing there for scale. You can see these are very narrow hallways, and they tilt inward. Very difficult to repurpose. Now on page 47, I do note that in the last sales document, they say the potential purchaser should review this as a redevelopment opportunity, either as a complete site redevelopment or renovation project. So it's very clear that a complete site redevelopment is likely not possible given the pending heritage designation. Page 49 on are my comparables, and I'm open to questions. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Santucci, questions of the story?
So the sale value was not true at 680,000, and there were some other adjustments made to it. Is that just a verbal thing? We don't have any evidence to provide that it.
That was reported in the course of reviewing this property. That was reported in the media. The councillor at the time agreed to the sale, but he wanted $200,000 to go to the to that sculpture garden. That is city-owned area. It's actually it's a large parcel. You can't see it on. I don't think in either of our briefs, but there's the Festival de Voyageur building. It's right at that's right at the front, and that's on the same parcel as the sculpture garden and the old the old fire station. And that's another property that's coming before the Heritage Nomination Committee. So yes, that is. I'm submitting that to you verbally. I can tell you that I'm not saying that value isn't correct. It is correct. However, it's that is not for that's not just a sworn value for the consideration of the subject property, but rather considers improvements that need to be done to that former site, which incidentally, which is interesting because the property that will be improved is not the property of the owner. It benefits him by as a positive externality. It's nice to be on a city park, but it's also a program they do and it is a sculpture garden. If you visit it, it's quite nice, and so part of that sale price went to the maintenance of that front piece, that civic center part. Yeah.
So the value you're asking for requested today is approximately 38% decrease from what you paid for the property. Essentially, has the property had substantial issues that would, what is causing this huge decrease? Because I know they adjusted the boiler. I would assume going in, he knew that the roof needed to be repaired if he was there, that it was the original roof.
I don't know that he would necessarily know that. And then the other thing that I would mention is that one sale doesn't necessarily give us the best indication of market value. This owner purchased this property thinking in 2014 that he could, and again, he's a doctor. He's not a property professional. He thought that he could convert this into a medical center. That has not materialized. So in terms of why did he pay $680 and I'm suggesting that it's $420? Well, if we look at the land comps minus demolition, that $420 is supported. If we look at the fact that it was put to market for years at $470 with a demolition condition, that was not, there was no takers on that. That value is actually supported. The value that with all due respect, it doesn't make any sense is 1.4 million. That's exceptionally high for the history of this property, for the development capability, for the fact that this owner is stuck, and it's going to be it's been a hard road in the past for him. It's difficult now, and it presumably will be hard going forward. So I think the value that we're proposing is fair, if not optimistic.
Does the owner still intend to redevelop it as medical? From my watching of the Heritage video a month ago, he does seem to still think that there is value in this property and that he wants to develop it.
Sure. So he wants to develop it. He doesn't want a caveat on title. He doesn't want to be handcuffed by a heritage designation. I mean, a heritage designation is great when we don't want to see buildings be demolished. This building, there's no intention for this owner to demolish this building. He wants to improve it. And that's a big question about heritage in the city. It's typically they used to say, I've been involved with heritage issues for some time. They used to use heritage designations to prevent what was called demolition by neglect. So what they didn't want to happen was for an owner to purchase the property, own it, let it fall into disrepair, and then have it delisted and demolished. There's no chance of that happening here. This owner wants to develop it into a medical clinic. There are some issues. I mean, the roof alone at $240,000. That's a massive expense that has to be borne solely by him, and it's you can imagine that's a great risk if the future of the property and your legal permissibility for future use is uncertain. So it's a very atypical property, to be certain. It's not one that we come across every day. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Would you agree your blended rate was $4.88 per square foot for the entire lease award?
My blended rate
For the rent.
yeah, because there's basement space, there's space that's unusable, there's this is not open space. This is space that is demised by concrete walls. So yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think yeah, you're not comparing this to a standard office building. This is a purpose-built courthouse, police station, and jail cell. So it will appear atypical, but given the site-specific attributes, I think it's appropriate.
Do you think it's appropriate to use the $7 still for the whole amount?
In terms of the carrying cost for the vacant space,
Yes.
absolutely.
So higher than the square foot. Right, okay. And based on your photos on page 19 to 25, I'm just kind of curious, like what is stopping someone from going in this space right now? Like page 19 shows, you know, from what I can see, there's carpet, there's wall finishes, there's ceilings finishes, there's lights. You know, page 20, looks like looking at these photos, I don't see
That's a lot.
shell space, but even on page 24 to 25, besides maybe replacing some flooring, I just am trying to get a feel of why the space is not able to be used as something else.
Well, I'm not saying it's not able to be used for something else. I'm saying that it's based on the rental comps that I've used. This would best be described in today's market as utility grade office space. So those are the sort of comps that I've used. However, there is a lot of work that needs to be done. Flooring needs to be ripped out, replaced. It is utility grade. It's a civic building. It was not built for to compete against other office buildings in the market. So and it is shelled space. There's nothing there. It's utility grade flooring and cinder block walls. So
Would you agree it's vacant space, not shell space?
no, I think that in terms of, well, it's vacant space. Yes, it is certainly vacant utility grade office space.
And then just my last question, going forward, the owner knew all this before he purchased the property, would he not?
You all
Like the sense of what it would take to renovate it, issues at hand, like he didn't know about the roof. Or like he knew that the boiler obviously had to be done, so that was place, like talk about water damage in that. Has the owner, is that just been deferred that the roof is, or has it been leaking for a while?
I'm not sure what level of inspection was done or what he was aware of or what he was not aware of when he purchased the building.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
Yes, so he bought the building a long time ago. What has he done in the meantime to go forward with developing it?
He's maintained it. He's not marketed it. There's a bit of an issue in terms of well, obviously the heritage designation. He doesn't know exactly what he can do going forward, so he's maintained it. He's kept it up, and it's not falling into disrepair by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, has he made applications to renovate it, to make it into medical space? Has he done anything there? Or is he just sitting on it?
He's just sitting on it.
Just sitting on it. Now, you indicate that there's a leaky roof and there's water damage. I'm looking at all your photos, especially the ceilings everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't see anywhere where there's water on the ceilings, water damage.
Well, I
So
have
I'm just
one.
wondering which photographs.
Yes,
because I'm looking at all of them, and a lot of them show ceilings.
Sure.
And the ceilings look like they're under good repair on the inside at least.
Sure. I mean, it is a large property, but on the I had one that was distinct, one room, that's page 29 and 28, where all the flooring had to be ripped out. Now that does occur throughout. I've only included one photo of that. But,
Yeah, I can't see the ceiling there. I see that the.
oh, I see. Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I'd like to see some leak because you showed the ceilings that are locked. I don't see anywhere where there's water spots on it.
Well, he does have a quote from a roofer suggesting that the cost to replace it is $240,000. So the roof does need to be repaired.
And other than putting in new boilers, what else is it done?
That's all I'm aware of. I know that he's ripped out some carpet. He hasn't put new flooring down. The boilers were replaced. I'm aware of that from him and from the sales listings.
Now, you said he's maintaining the building, and certainly if the roof is leaking like you're indicating, that would cause damage that would only get worse and cause a lot further damage
Right.
inside to a cost motor repair. Has he not done anything to stop the leaking in the roof? I'm talking about from a repair point of view, not a
Right.
replacement.
Well, I think it's a good question. So what has he done to remediate the roof? Well, he has had someone look at it, clearly. He has a quote.
Yeah.
But now he's waiting to see the status of the heritage designation. So that heritage designation process does pin up any sort of permits that you can take out to remediate a property that's under that.
Well, certainly not repair though. He still has to repair the building. A roof, you would need a permit to repair the roof if it's leaking.
Well, when a property has a heritage designation, you have to go through a whole different process of permit issuance. So you need a heritage permit.
Right now, it doesn't have a heritage designation.
No, it
It says
doesn't.
review.
Correct.
So right now, he could fix the roof if he then repairs to it.
Good, but if he has plans to do something with that building,
I know, but my question was, has he done repairs to it?
the only thing that I know
You don't know.
are the boilers.
Because I don't see the floors being damaged by water. I don't see really water damage in all your
I
photos.
see carpets being
I
ripped.
saw carpets being ripped out. I don't know why he ripped them out.
Because if there's water, I mean,
Well, that's what you're saying.
mildew issues. Yeah.
You even see any water.
No, I didn't see any water. Just evidence on the brick that I showed
You indicated that land values, you thought the city's values were too high and you had much lower ones. What have you got as
Well-
market sales to
there. Sure.
to show that your sale
I
values
haven't-
for land are accurate?
I haven't done a land value
Yeah.
on this property because it's there's no potential for this property to be demolished. So it's completely theoretical. I'm simply pointing out the value that was sent to the owner.
But you give amounts, so just wondering how you got this amounts.
No, I'm suggesting that if we look at the land sale comps that
Yeah,
I reviewed that the assessor has sent out, that they're using $56.17.
right.
And I'm suggesting to you that the only comps that are applicable, and again, this is theoretical, this property cannot be demolished, but if we were to look at a land value, it has to be the land value per square foot minus the cost of demolition and remediation. So I'm saying that $56.17 is not supported by anything that we see in the market, and even by the owners or by the assessor's submission here. The first four may be reasonable, but those are properties that had development potential. Those are properties that have since had multifamily developments built on them. They have a large driver for the rate per square foot for vacant land is the capacity for development going forward. Our property doesn't have any capacity for development going forward, so it's a theoretical exercise at best. But even so, if we were to look at a potential land value, we also have to look at the demolition costs. So I'm saying that you'd be coming in somewhere closer to $27 to $30 per square foot, but then you'd have to add in an extra $8 to call it $8 per square foot for demolition. That's industry standard.
Yeah, I just want to give $27 to $30 based on.
Well, I'm basing it on what the assessor submitted. We've valued this property on income because it's not going to be demolished. There's no chance of it being demolished.
There. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diamond. Mr. Hutchings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Story, can we go back to page 36 of the assessor's presentation? And that's a newspaper article detailing the historical designation meeting.
Yep.
Just bear with me 1 second. I got to get there too. And Ms. Gilroy details, just bear with me 1 second. Basically, the panel there, Ms. Gilroy, states that there was no reason with the historical designation that this couldn't be, this would impede the development of a medical clinic for the current owner. Is that accurate?
She's saying that just because we list something as historical, that doesn't mean that other wonderful things can't be made within that space. So, sure, I don't know. What I can tell you is that the reason many owners oppose heritage designation is because there are what are called CDEs, character defining elements, that are protected. So it could be something like a banister, it could be like a flagpole. You never know what the Heritage Resource Committee is going to suggest is ought to be protected, and that does affect potential development. It also is a caveat on title, which is not good for an owner. That doesn't run with the owner, that runs with the property. Typically, we don't see that heritage caveat being removed unless the building effectively falls into absolute disrepair. So one of the other major concerns with the heritage designation is it changes the permitting process. So it's
I understand. You detailed all that to Ms. Santucci. Okay, so but she's saying that in her opinion, it wouldn't affect the usage of as a medical clinic of that building. Now you walked through I understand you inspected the property in September of 2021 with the owner. Okay, with the owner?
With the owner.
Okay. From what you saw there, could it be currently utilized as a medical clinic? That's
substantial modifications. Again,
in what way?
While medical clinics require a different degree of fit up than do regular office space. So a regular professional office space typically requires a certain degree of finish, but it doesn't have the same. There's grease traps for sinks. There's the potential to run medical gases and store. Like it's a whole different ball of wax. If you think of how a dental office or a medical office is configured, it's much different than, for example, a lawyer or accountant's office. The degree of fit up is
okay. So let's talk about patient rooms and that kind of thing. Physically, from what you showed us, it could be utilized as a medical office. I think now I guess my next question is it the intent of the current owner to turn it into a medical office?
That has been his intention since he purchased it in 2014, but it's proven difficult.
But is it currently listed for sale or lease?
It's been listed for sale for some time, yes.
Okay, so which way is he planning to go here? Is he not proceeding with the medical clinic, or is he selling it or leasing it?
He's not leasing it. He's offering it for sale. I think that if he could sell it, he would. I think that's safe to say.
Okay, so from your personal knowledge, is he intending on doing some leakage repairs on the roof and proceeding to renovate it into a medical facility?
I think the main issue is that he's waiting to see what happens with the heritage designation.
Okay.
And how that all shakes out, and that will have some bearing on how he proceeds. I think that's
okay. My next question is, excuse me, if it does get historical designation, what kind of grants would this property qualify for? Are we talking $1 million in renovation costs that he would be compensated for, or what are we talking about here for grants?
There are two currently in the city of Winnipeg. There are two municipal heritage programs. There's the Gail Parvin Hammerquist Fund, and that is a matching contribution up to $55,000, and that has very, very stringent requirements. Okay. The other is the Heritage Tax Credit program, which has been fully subscribed since at least 2018 that I'm aware of. So we often hear that owners can avail themselves of funding, but that's actually, I think that's that comes with an asterisk.
Okay. my next question is, would this economic impact be considered post-reference in valuing a property, according to the Broadway Square decision?
Sorry,
The designation.
Sure. So, yeah, absolutely. But in terms of present physical condition, we are talking about the current legal permissibility of what can be done. So I don't think that it is, I'm not suggesting that the heritage designation is applied now. I'm simply suggesting that the fact that it's in play currently does affect what we'll call the present physical, which ties into the legal permissibility of what can be done in this property. So I think it's fair comment, and has been brought up by the department. So I'm simply speaking.
So the just to be clear, you've just stated that the heritage designation should not be considered in the valuation.
I'm suggesting that
Economic.
we're talking about where that would be captured would be in the cap rate. And as I mentioned, for suburban office cap rates, we're looking at a range, a stratification of 6.25 to 7.5. Now, there are other factors that would lead the market, in our opinion, to believe that an 8.5 cap is appropriate outside of the heritage designation. The fact that a heritage designation is likely, I think many purchasers in the market would see this property and say, well, the past use was as part of the same plot as Civic Center, so the likelihood of heritage designation would be in the background. However, we also see that this property is of a certain age. It's built up to the property line. It's demised in a way that's not optimal. Redemising it is very difficult because, again, it is masonry construction reinforced with rebar for the purpose of courthouse, jail cell, and police station. So the adjustment to the cap rate is not solely based on heritage designation, to be certain.
But my question was, according to the legal standards set, post-reference economic conditions should not be considered in the current assessment of the property. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I don't think that we're submitting anything post-reference here today. We're just talking about
Well, when you speak at length about the application for historical designation, you're implying that it should be considered. Am I misunderstanding this, or?
I'm responding to the assessor's position. The assessor has included a great deal of information about the heritage designation, so I'm simply responding to that.
Well, she included one page, but okay. So to be clear, you're in agreement that the historical designation application is post-reference and should not be considered in the 2018 base year valuation of this property.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And just to confirm, you visited with the owner, did a physical inspection, and the owner is still planning on developing the property, does have it currently listed for lease and or sale, and you have no personal knowledge of whether he's going to start that renovating the property.
It's not listed for lease, it's listed for sale. It has been for some time.
Yeah.
I did visit the property. I don't know what his intentions are going forward. He did mention that the outcome of the heritage nomination will affect his plans going forward.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Santucci, summation if you want.
I guess to just go over it, we've taken into account what we think the property is currently able to pull in. If it were obviously a below market rent, there is some work to be done. Based on my floor plans, I don't think it's I don't think it's fair to say that this property couldn't be rented out right now and that it's completely useless is what it's currently set out to be. There's spaces, I wouldn't say they're smaller than normal, besides again, that 9% area, which is jail cells. That I don't know what to do with. But the majority of the property, I do think, based on just maybe we're doing some flooring and stuff, could be leased out. So I do not think that the value I've come up with today is unfair towards what is currently there today. So again, I think it's fair to look at my income value, and that's the representation of what the property should be assessed at.
Thank you, Mr. Story.
Yes, just very briefly in summation, we believe that the assessment department has overstated the rents by classifying this as medical. It's not currently medical. It's understated the vacancy. It's understated the non-recoverable expenses and the capitalization rate is not reflective of the present physical assets. So we're not saying that it's not rentable. We're saying that it is currently, at best, described as utility grade office, and those are the types of rents that should be applied. We're saying that the basement ought to be considered for what it is. We're not looking at medical office rents for the basement. So again, based on the inputs by the valuation metric, we believe that the city has overstated the value of this property and request that the $419,000 be applied. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we take a 5-minute break, I want to go back to the first one we had on the docket, which is 1868 Portage Avenue, and talk about the non-co-op. So, Brittany, are you going to be seeking the non-co-op?
So essentially, yes. So even if the value is he's confirming it, my intention was to seek the non-co-op for the non-response for that property.
Okay, so, Mr. Story, your comments in that regard?
We're just looking for the assessment to be confirmed. So we're not disputing the non-co-op at this time, and then we're not disputing the value.
Okay, good. And the members will discuss that later. Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute recess for people that have to move their car or anything. Want coffee?
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And we'll go to the next one on the docket, which is 140 Warman Road. So, Ms. Santucci, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is file number 21-335. This roll number 06051 752 500. Address is 140 Warman Road. So this is a vehicle service related property. We have a gross floor area of 9,490 square feet and a leasable area of 8,800 square feet. So if we turn to page 2, I just have some aerial shots of the property. It is currently, as I said, a vehicle service related. It's about entire. I don't have any interior photos, and I did not inspect the property. On page 3, just to show we received income and expense questionnaire, no subject sale history, and based on the income and expense that was received, I found that there was the net lease in place. There was a bit of discrepancy with the income versus the monthly, so I'll go with the $10 per square feet based on previous mailers as well. And it's a 10-year term. It's a step up, so there is some increases. And for that, yes, again, the $10 net per square foot. So on my page 4, I have the income workup. Our rent applied is $10.36, so very close to what they're currently paying. Our standard 4% vacancy for this type of property. Again, the expense shortfall and an overall capitalization rate model derived of 6.55%. So the estimated value of $1,285,000. My rent comparables are standard vehicle service related, comparables 1 to 15. Average of $13.63 and a median at $13.24. So obviously what I'm using is a bit lower than that, but it was also very applicable to what they're currently paying. So page 6 is just the capitalization rates table. We've gone over Municipal Assessment Act excerpts on page 7, and then the mailer starts on page 8. So that's where I've gotten that data from. And it goes to page 10, and then the addenda on page 11, which we went over. So my recommendation today is to maintain the 2022 assessed value of the $1,285,000. Thank you. That's my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so you've not seen the interior, but have you visited the exterior of this property? Are you familiar with the site?
No, I haven't been to this site at all.
Okay. Can we agree though that it is an older rigid steel warehouse style building? Is that safe to say?
Yeah, typical of like a 1979 build. I doubt, I couldn't find any permits to say that they've done anything to the property, so.
Yeah, so I searched the permits for the last 20 years and basically did 3, and they're all related to signage. So it's safe to say it's true to its vintage. Now, in terms of the wall heights, that's a 16-foot wall height. That would be considered reasonably low for today's industrial standards. That's safe to say.
Well, yeah, I guess for an industrial property, I'm not sure for most car related. I wouldn't say they necessarily always have higher wall height, but.
Okay, so are you suggesting this is not an industrial property?
Well, it's a vehicle service related, so I wouldn't say it's like an industrial storage warehouse or anything.
Okay. It's interesting. Okay, so the land to plan is reasonably good, but it is impacted by a hydro corridor. Did you notice that by your photos? There's a hydro corridor. There's power lines running right through it, and actually in the middle of their storage space, there's a tower. Did you note that?
So I see the tower on page 2, but it's not. Doesn't look like it's impeding on anything necessarily. They still have all their stuff everywhere, but there's no note on the file for that, so I didn't.
And the site is largely unpaved. That's safe to say.
From what I can see, yes.
Okay. Now on page 4, so something that's happened, and again, this is our first look at this, but one thing that I did notice in the discovery period here is that there was a code change from industrial warehouse to vehicle service garage, and that gave rise to a fairly substantial increase in the value. Is that safe to say?
Yes, so the property was reviewed prior to the 2020 reassessment and determined not to be an industrial warehouse. It's a vehicle service related building. So it was changed from the 2018, the parameters would have changed.
Right, so that would give rise to a substantial increase. Now, in terms of the parameters here, these are all modeled. Is that safe to say?
Yes, model parameters.
Okay, and that cap rate, so you're suggesting that's not an industrial cap rate, but rather a retail cap rate?
I would say, well, based on like a typical CMBSR, I've done analysis on the cap rates we have. I think that's a fair representation. Like I don't obviously have them in my capitalization rate chart, but based on my assessor's knowledge, I think that's a fair cap rate.
Okay. I think those are my questions based on what you said. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes, those are my questions. Thanks.
Mr. Diamond, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hutchins?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Santucci, page 4, your rent comparables. Are these comparables mainly vehicle service garages?
Yes, so these are all vehicle service garages, just in various parts of the city. And this is pretty much our standard chart for all of the ones that have been, I actually have reviewed all of these ones.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, so here we are at Warman Road. This is a rigid steel property that's built in 1979. As we've established, there's not been substantial work to warrant an age variant. It is industrial in nature. The degree of finish is if you go to the city business assessment, you can see it's not air conditioned space. It's it is a service garage, but I would suggest to you that is typically this would be seen by the market as an industrial property. Again, we have an unpaved lot, but good land to plan. However, we are impacted by that hydro corridor going through. Now there are some regulations where you have to keep a certain area open and available. So that does affect potential development of the site. We do consider that that is a factor. So we've mentioned it. We've mentioned that the only permanent work done relates to the signage. It's not air conditioned, and the wall heights are 16 feet, which are reasonably short by today's industrial standards. It is zoned M2. We do also know that there have been sizable increases from the 16, 18, and 20 assessment cycle, and I think we've determined here that that's based on the methodology applied by the assessment department as opposed to a market condition. So we are not disputing the rents. We think the rents are reasonable at 1036. We're accepting that. That's within the range. Rentable area is not disputed. I should have mentioned the vacancy. I apologize, but we have reviewed the Johnson report, which is considered the standard for industrial vacancy in the city of Winnipeg. We note that this section of St. Boniface, older industrial in St. Boniface, does typically carry a higher vacancy rate than the city on a whole, and that vacancy rate also does include some consideration for collection or bad debt loss. So we're not far apart, but we applied 5% in our evaluation. So we're not worlds apart there, but we have considered the area, considered the Johnson report, and we do note that St. Boniface, especially when you look at a 10-year average of that section of industrial properties in the city, is typically higher than the city average. So 5% is what we've included. Now we are of the belief that whether it's a service garage or whatever the current use may be, this is a property that is industrial in nature. So you've been provided with our industrial caps study. Just to summarize that, we have stratified 3 different grades. So what we'll call A grade industrial property would typically be applied to 6.25 cap to a 7. A B grade would be 7% to 7.75, and then non-investment grade industrial product in the city of Winnipeg would start at an 8% cap, and then further adjustments may be made based on site-specific attributes. So for this property, we're suggesting that a cap rate of 7.5% is appropriate. And so that leads us to an indicated market value at the reference date of $1,048,000. So we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed $1,048,000. The balance of my brief is just the building details. You can see it is a metal frame, rigid steel construction, built in 1979, single story, 16-foot wall heights. The assessor's valuation. I did note again in the 17 and 18 income expense, it's on page 21 of my brief, that there was a use code change, and I think that's led to some frustration for the owner in terms of the assessment jumping from the last few cycles. So again, by our analysis, this is our first look at this property, and based on what we've submitted here today, we believe the value should not exceed $1,048,000. And I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Future questions of Mr. Story.
Thank you. So typically, the vacancy applied to these types of properties by Altus during the last cycle was 4%. So you're stating today that you use 5 based on the location?
Typically for properties throughout the city, typical industrial vacancy throughout the city across all grades, investment grade, non-investment grade, owner-occupied. Non-owner-occupied is 3%, plus there's a consideration for collection loss. However, we've used vacancy between 6 and 8% for St. Boniface. So I think 5% is reasonable. It is somewhere in that middle investment grade quality, owner-occupied. It could be up to 6%, but I've used 5%.
You take into account that the property hasn't experienced any vacancy in the last 10 to 20 years?
Well, it's a single tenant property, so typically you'll see vacancy of either 0% or 100%. So, and we are looking at a fee simple approach. So the next prudent owner would certainly apply some level of vacancy in their calculations. So we think 5% is reasonable.
And for capitalization rate, you said you looked at industrial ones. You chose to go to the higher end. Is there more risk with this type of property? It's just more negative things associated with this?
Well, I don't think it's to the higher end. I think it's appropriate for a property of this age. It has limited development potential. It is somewhat off the beaten path. It's not in a major newer industrial area. It is impacted by that hydro corridor, which doesn't impede development. It is unpaved. It does have short wall heights. So given all those factors, I think that 7.5 is quite fair.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchins?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. So either party wants submission?
Not at all.
Okay. Okay, then we'll go on to the next one, which is 111 4th Street. Santucci, the floor is yours.
So this is file number 21-284, rule number 12097 804 365. So the address is 111 4th Street. There's actually 3 addresses associated with this property. 111 Fort is associated with the retail building. And then the 1117 is also associated with that building. And 123 Fort is associated with the car-related portion of this building. So while we have the parcel code as vehicle service related, there isn't a retail income stream associated with this property. So we have a few actual year builds, 1910 to 1950, effective year builds as well for renovations that have been put on the property. So we have here, there is a basement area. It's underneath the vehicle service related portion, which is the 123 Fort. We have a gross floor area for all the space at 25,052 square feet and a leasable area of 24,145 square feet. Okay, so if I move to page 2, I have an aerial photo, which just shows there that middle photo, kind of how I said the addresses for the 111, 117, and the 123. So we have the retail portion, which is the 111 and 117. And then to the back of that, there's a long, skinnier building. That building doesn't have a separate address. That one's associated with 123 Fort for the car-related portion. So my exterior photo, I tried to separate them out to kind of show you the 2 separate spaces. So someone was in this property from our building in December 2013. They took some photos. So those are from the retail portion. These are some main floor photos of the interior. There's, I think, a hair salon, front lobby. On page 4, we have some second floor office space. And then when we go to page 5, there's some interior photos of the car-related portion of this. So typical vehicle service garage. On page 6, there's the second floor for the car garage, which obviously is limited mostly to storage. It's not usable. I wouldn't say it's like office space. So we've applied like storage rents to account for that. And then we also have basement space, which is just used from what the note said is tire storage space as well. So in my page 8, just to show a portion of the retail building has been vacant. It's vacant as of April 1st, 2018. And this is just a lease ad from December 2013. And it just shows some of that interior space. And this would be in the retail portion. On page 10, I have a request for income and expense, which has been received. No subject sale history. So what I could determined from the mailer was that 123 Fort Street is owner occupied and it's a Fountain Tire, but there's also some confusion over that. I'm not sure. We'll get into that more when the applicant speaks to his brief. And then 111 Fort Street has a tenant that is the Loft, the hair salon. They're using about a $9.12 per square foot rent. And then again, that space on the second floor, which has been vacant for quite some time. On my page 11, I have the retail workup for the income stream. So we have a main floor at the 5,100 square feet, a second floor office, small office space at 346 square feet, and then the remaining second floor at 477 square feet. So we've looking at that as a blended rate, it's $12.54. There's a vacancy loss of 6%, expenses 2, shortfall 650, and overall capitalization rate at 8.4%. So that's the estimated market value of the $1,358,000. So my comparable rents, I tried to find rents that were close to the subject property in the downtown. My comparable 6 is the only one that's a taller office building from my understanding. The number of floors is wrong on that. But comparables, I have 1 to 12, all located within good distance of the subject property. And these are retail rents I've included. So average is $14.69 and the median is $14. So slightly below our blended rate of the $12.54. On my page 12, I've included the vehicle service garage portion. So we have 3,162 square feet at $12.99. We've associated some of that, basement space, second floor space that wasn't really usable, like I would say usable as like an office space or anything like that. We used 3,162 square feet at a value of like $3.25. So substandard storage space. And then we also have 7,605 square feet at $12.08. So the blended rate for the vehicle service garage is $10.28 per square foot. So we've applied the model's 4% vacancy, 2% expense, $4.50 for shortfall, and an overall capitalization rate of 7.05%. So the estimated value for this was $1,876,000, but this value was decreased, the board revision. So essentially, when I computed this brief out, it drops the estimated value on this page. I did not go back to our original value. I'm just defending what was already done at the board of revision for 2020. So that's why that looks skewed there. So my comparable rents, again, these are the same CMBRSR rents for the city. Average at $13.63, median at $13.24, and we're below that by about $3 for our modeled. So page 13, again, the original value that was taken to the 2020 board was the $3,234,000. It was cut at the board of revision to $2,916,000. So that's what, again, I'm defending here today, just what the board has already placed on. So capitalization rates on page 14. Let's switch to the mailer is page 16. So this is where there was some confusion the more I looked at it. On page 18, the owner puts in the loft rent, which I went over, and I assumed the other rent was for Fountain Tire where they put owner. But now, upon further review, it seems that the owner occupies a very small space in the second floor of the retail building. So I'm not sure what Fountain Tire is. I don't know what they're paying, their lease. Because I did a company search, it doesn't seem to be owner occupied. So I'll have to leave it up to the applicant to provide us with that information. On page 19, I have the 2020 Board of Revision order, just to show that it was decreased based on the applicant's evidence. And that was done January 20th, 2020. And The workup for the applicant's evidence is on page 21. So I've included that, and then my board revision addenda is on page 22. I've obviously, I think I'll speak to my rebuttal after then. So that's my presentation, and my recommendation today is to maintain the 2022 assessed value, which was the board revision value of the $2,916,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just to be very clear, this property was appealed by a different firm. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it was another applicant.
Okay, and what they submitted is encompassed on page 21 of your brief?
Yes.
Okay, so is it fair to say then that what's being presented to this board today is new information?
Yes, so what you would be providing would not be this workup from page 21.
Right, so that applicant, again, from a different firm, provided a blended net market income over the VSG and the office retail, a blended vacancy. It's all sort of put into one income stream where, okay, so it is materially different. Okay, so I just want to go through this very quickly. Now, just to set the table so we're all aware, in the past, the VSG was on one roll and the office was on a separate roll, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and there was a supplementary at some time, I believe it was as part of the 18 cycle, and that increased the value substantially.
Because they were merged together. There was no change in 2018 value. What was Assessor and retail and the car were just merged together since they were the same owners and connected parcels.
There was a supplementary that was issued that increased the value by north of $1 million, correct?
It was essentially the two values merged together.
Okay, so it was based on the two values being merged together.
Yes, which would increase the one parcel, yes, the 1114. Essentially 123.
Okay, no, what I'm getting at is the net value, the consolidated value of the two rolls. There's a supplementary that was issued. There was a 15-1 signed by a previous. This is in 2016, so this is just to get a sense of sort of the owner's frustration with this. That the rolls were merged. The owner did not agree to that. They didn't want that. But the agent at the time agreed to a certain value. But that, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is that supplementary that was issued, I don't see any work that was done. There was no change in tenancy. So do you have any idea what happened?
Well, there was no increase in overall value. We took one parcel and added it to another.
Right.
So it was just, yes, there's a larger value, but we didn't apply anything to increase the value. Like,
what I mean, okay, so I understand there's two separate issues here. There's the merging of the rolls, and that doesn't give rise to a net value over the two rolls being merged. It's just the sum of the parts.
yes.
Okay. But prior to that, there was a supplementary issue that increased the value substantially. Are you aware of that?
No, when I looked, it was just the merging of the roles together. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Something did happen. That's fine. We'll just carry on. That was in the past. We can't affect that now, but it is something that happened. Now, the actual year built and the effective year, that 1910 and 1925 effective, that is the office portion. Is that correct?
I think the office portion was, well, the retail building was built first, and then the 123 Fort was built later, and then the last one was that long skinny building that connects them both together.
All right. Now your land to plan at 1.6 to 1. That's fairly low. I mean, that's not a huge issue for the office, but that would affect the vehicle service use, presumably.
It would, but it's located in the downtown, so typically there's not large land to planned areas in the downtown.
And there's typically not vehicle service garages in the middle of the downtown either, right?
Typically there's a few, but I would say they all deal with that same issue of knowing where their business is located.
Okay, and would you say then that the combination of an office and a vehicle service garage is atypical for the downtown?
I'd say atypical, but it works. Not.
Okay, but the second floor has been vacant of that office space for going back to, I believe, 2013 or before. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, so as of the reference date, there was no tenant upstairs. It was vacant for 5 years.
Vacant for 5 years, and present physical condition is that it's still vacant, correct?
No, there's permits for a tenant, but
That's-
that would be post permits.
Okay, is that the owner who's occupying that
No.
340 square
There's
feet?
a retail permit out for
Okay,
tattoo parlor, I think it is.
okay. All right, but we can agree that there has been a history of vacancy on the office.
Yes, there
portion.
was for the 5 years, yes.
Okay, but that vacancy has not been adjusted in your workup on page 11? That's
We wouldn't consider it chronic, but yeah, we just applied the modeled 6%.
Okay, so is it, from the department's perspective, it's either chronic or it's modeled? So it's, like, how long would it have to be vacant? Like 5 years isn't enough for it to be 95% vacant, or?
We could start reviewing it, and then if we felt necessary to adjust it, this one was not adjusted based on that.
And the 8.4% cap, that's reasonably high. Do you know what gives rise to model applying an 8.4 cap?
I think it would just be that it's a built in 1910 older retail building.
So it's primarily age.
I would think a primary thing of that would be, yeah, the age of it.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Now, in terms of your rental comps, have you visited these rental comps?
Let me see if I have mine. I don't know if I've been in every single one of them, but I've been in some of them just, again, for business assessment, not necessarily any sort of retail.
Okay, you said that the floors were maybe not.
The floors on comparable 6, I would say, but the majority of these are just 1 to 2 story walk-ups that I know of, with some, like, obviously older years, like comparable to 1902. Sort of thing.
Okay, so let's just go through them quickly. I've visited all of these. I know them fairly well. So number 1, that's Kennedy and Vaughan. Is that the coffee shop or is that the retail space in that building?
Let's see. I don't think I included my tenant list. I can't speak to the tenants.
But are you aware then that that property was renovated in 2016?
I would assume most of these have gone through some sort of small renovations.
I believe that was a full
Since-
renovation in 2016.
That one potentially, yes. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Now 262, that's the Herdig building. Is this on the second floor or the first floor?
That one would be main
That's-
floor, from my understanding.
Okay, so that would be the news, community news. They've been there
Yes.
for many years. Okay, so that's not a fresh lease. They've been there for many years. Is that fair? Okay. Number 3 is the Omega building. I couldn't find info on that tenant. Is that the hair salon on the main floor?
Yeah, so the higher rents I've included here were the hair salon tenants,
Okay,
which typically are higher in other buildings. In this building, they're not charging like a higher market rent. I would say like the $9.12 per square foot is on the lower end.
sorry, I'm looking at 436 Graham. That's number 3. So that's 2149.
That one's higher, yes.
Right, so is that loaded with inducements? Or is that a true net rent?
It's what they've supplied to us. They don't go into detail of inducements. So
That's fine. Can we agree, though, that when there are fresh rents with hair salons, that typically there are inducements because they do need a certain degree of specialized modifications to the building? Is that fair to say?
there could be, again, they don't provide that to us, so.
All right. Okay, number 4, so I'm aware of that. Now that's interesting. I handled that appeal. That's a 17-story multi-use building. Now I'm assuming that's the higher quality office, but are you aware that there are also office rents in that building at $7.50 a square foot at the reference date?
At one point, you don't. There potentially could be. I didn't look for the entire mailer.
5, that's the Herdig building again. Now, is that the main floor restaurant that's next door to the Mini News? It's since closed up, or would that be the office on the second floor?
That would be probably the second floor. Again, I thought I had included a tenant list to bring for myself, but I don't have it, so.
6 is a hair salon again, just go through this quickly. Now 7 is only 500 square feet. It's extremely small. So typically we command a higher rent. Now, 171, see that come up a lot. That's a convenience store, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, 155 Ford is great. That's the same owner. I've used that as well. However, are you aware that that rent includes 6 parking stalls, and then also it's finished to a higher degree, but it's the same owner.
Yeah, they don't provide to us that parking stalls are like again with the lease, but that's just the rental rate they provide. So.
And then lastly, 387 Broadway. Is that a law firm as tenant? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, I don't know off the top.
Okay, but typically, okay, so that building comes up a fair bit, and is it fair to say that there might be a premium for a law office to be
Potentially law offices, I would say, have higher market rents.
right, but also to be right next to the Woodworth building is beneficial because there's a skywalk access to the courts. Okay, that's fine. Now, in terms of the vehicle service garage, we're okay with everything that's been applied here. I do think the cap rate is a little low, but in terms of the resulting net value, I don't think it's out of bounds. So we're in the interest of narrowing our issues. That's fine. But the one major question that I have, I can't seem to determine the answer here, is where did that total leasable area on the service garage come from? 13,929.
So I provided that in my rebuttal brief, just
Okay.
to kind of go over how we came up with that number.
I haven't seen it yet, so would you
Okay.
mind letting me know how you came up with that?
Oh yeah, so I looked through all the floor plans. We have determined that the building at 123 Fort has a main floor, a second floor, and a basement. We have 1,973 allocated to the basement, 3,162 to the main, and 3,162 to the second floor. On my rebuttal brief,
Okay, you know what, sorry,
Oh.
the panel members and the applicant haven't received
Oh,
the rebuttal yet, so,
okay.
yeah, we don't just.
Sorry, that's my fault. I
Okay.
was asking just to, that's on me.
I I can distribute that now.
Perfect, yeah. And then it would probably give them a better idea, just with the discrepancy. It is quite confusing.
Well, I mean,
It took me a while to figure out.
well, and the lease, the issue is that speaking to the owner, the lease clearly states here it's 8,930 square feet. So a discrepancy of 5,000 square feet is,
Yes,
is
so I figured I'd provide what I had.
Ron, it should be in your inbox now.
Shall I send that to my email or
I haven't emailed it to you yet.
Okay.
I'm just doing the panel members right now.
look up on my phone? Or wait, get the usually.
Also,
Yep.
I want to take a peek at it. I'll try it too.
Mr. Chair, could we ask questions of the assessor first?
We were with Mr. Story
Asking questions.
questions.
Yeah.
So,
Should I continue on with my questions and then deal with the rebuttal?
I'm sorry?
Would you like me to continue on with my questions and then deal with the rebuttal?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think I'm fairly close.
okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so Robert, we're going to go, we'll continue on with Mr. Story and then we'll eventually get to the rebuttal. Okay.
Mr. Chair, those are my questions.
Okay.
On
Good.
the assessor's presentation. Yeah.
Mr. Diamond, you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess I got a couple. Firstly, if the 2021 assessment as ordered by the Board of Revision is under appeal?
No, so what was done at the Board of Revision for 2020 was obviously it was a different applicant. They
Right.
never appealed it to municipal board, and then it was just the 2022 appeal with a new applicant.
Because there's no appeal on the 2021.
No, it was just carried over from what was decided at the board.
Okay. And is the property basically the same property as was reviewed a year ago by the
There's
position?
been no changes
No
to my
changes?
knowledge, no.
Okay, that's my questions.
Mr. Hutchins, questions?
Yes, thank you. Brittany, I'm looking at page 2, your aerial view and then the physical view of the property
Yes.
from the front. Okay, so I'll start with 123. That's addressed. So that's the fountain. When I look at the picture, the frontal view of the property, that's Fountain Tire from the front, but then it continues along behind 117 and 111. Is that right?
Yes, and then there's also a portion of Fountain Tire under what would be the 117.
I see that.
You can see the overhead door, so.
Now does Fountain Tire have the upstairs of that 117 also?
No,
Is that
from
the-
my knowledge, it was just the main floor.
Okay, so it's a bit confusing because it looks like there's the overhead doors continue behind 117. You see what I mean there? Like it's like there's some entrances there,
Yeah,
but physically it's not, is it?
yeah, so they are connected. Like 123 is connected to that long portion at the back, and that would be where those overhead doors you see are in the middle of them.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you access from the 2 and go into that rear part, that skinny part there. Right. Okay. Now I get it. So there's stalls in there. Okay. Now, and then if we look at the rear of 111, there is physical parking space, like 4 spots. Is that fair?
I'm not sure if they're used for parking, but there is some space there, yes.
Looks like there's cars parked there.
Yeah,
Yeah. It looks like at least 2 or 3, maybe, depending on the size of the vehicle. So that parking belongs to 111, do you think? Do you know?
it would be
Yeah.
assumed that it's their space, and I'm not sure how there's nothing on the mailer to say if they charge for parking or whatnot, but that is their space.
Okay, so then if we go to the next page, to page 3, I guess, we've got that other corner, the south or northeast corner. I guess the loft is the hair salon on the main floor. And then we have a for lease sign upstairs.
Yes.
And that says it says heated parking available.
Yes.
What is that all about?
I am unsure. We've never been, there's nothing on file from the owner to state whether or not, I couldn't find anything like looking it up.
Okay.
And there's nothing on the mailer that says they charge for parking. So
Yeah.
we are aware of it, but
Okay. And my last question is, the basement area is obviously used for revenue making storage of seasonal tire changes. Would that be fair?
yeah, it's just strictly storage space that the owner needs to have. So we've applied a rate that we felt was applicable for that.
Yeah. So when they bring in their winter tires, the Fountain Tire will charge them for storage until they're swapped back in the fall, and vice versa for summer tires, I guess.
Yes.
So they're making revenue from that area. Now, that basement area? Is it underneath the whole part of the main floor?
No, it's actually only under a part of 123 Fort. So you can see kind of on the roof on my page 2.
Yes.
It's only under that. So not the one that fronts onto York, but the other part of 123. Almost like it looks like the middle of 123, and then where that new build, or that obviously where the extension is, but.
Okay, so that skinnier part that's running to the
So
right.
just to the left of that,
Yeah.
there's that, like, just that one portion of 123. It's not fully under 123, just a partial.
Okay, and that's the garage portion that you're assessing. I'm not sure how many square feet here, but yeah, okay. So it's just a partial, and you're assigning a rent to that revenue producing basement, right?
Yes.
Okay. I believe that is all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Story, are you happy with the rebuttal square footage?
Well, I'd like to kind of go through it, but am I happy with it in terms of my review of it? Like I've seen it enough to discuss it. Sure. Yeah. I think we can proceed.
Okay. Okay. So you're okay?
Yeah. No, it seems. Well, yeah, it's fine. I think there's some issues that I'll speak to in my presentation. I think that the heated parking area might be what's giving rise to this discrepancy of 5,000 square feet. There is indoor heated parking space. It is reported. Perhaps that's where where the issue is arising. I can tell you that the lease on the Fountain Tire is 8,930 square feet. It's not 13,000 square feet. So perhaps some of that parking is what's giving rise to this discrepancy. But I do know that the lease is 8,930 square feet. So.
Okay. So Ms. Santucci, are you finished with your presentation?
I'm finished with my current presentation. If you want me to go over the rebuttal brief, I can kind
Yes.
of go
Yes.
over how I determined
Yes.
everything. Because it took
If
me
you
a
don't
while to. So if you want to, that's the only copy I have.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Jared, I did email it.
I have it in my.
Okay.
I'll follow my phone. Yeah.
Perfect. So if I can go straight into my
Yes.
rebuttal brief. Upon review of the applicant's brief and just kind of understanding what was done with the merge, I looked for the floor plans we had on file, which are quite dated. So if there's anything, obviously I'll say to the applicant, if there's anything they can provide that gives more, I guess, information to what is currently there. So my page 2, which unfortunately I haven't numbered these, but that's the one that shows the leasable area and then the 3 different sections of building. I tried to break down what gross areas were attached to that, you know, the 1, 2, 3, 4 in green, the building that is in blue, and then 1117, 1114 in yellow. So those are the gross areas that I have listed there. So we have a total gross of 25,052 square feet. So when you look at the vehicle service garage portion, there's a higher leasable area than the gross that we've associated with that space. And that has to do with the fact that there is a portion of that 1117, as you can see from the pictures, that's used by the vehicle service garage. So the retail to me looked fair. The leasable seems fair. The only thing I'll say is we've allocated 907 square feet to the lobby stairwell because there is that like higher leasable efficiency of 96%. I will probably review that further if I can get new updated floor plans just to make sure that number is correct because it is a higher leasable efficiency. But other than that, yeah, and then with the portion of, I do think it's fair that our leasable garage area is higher than the gross area associated with it, just because they do occupy that like main floor on 1117. It's quite confusing. But so my page 3, which again, I'm sorry, I don't have it numbered there, the 3rd page, it just shows that the 123 Ford is approximately the 90 by 35 square feet. And then that space that's in between that connects the buildings is 132 by about 28 square feet. So I'm assuming the heated garage is that portion to the right of the Fountain Tire. Not sure. Again, it probably just would involve an inspection and updated floor plans to confirm everything. It shows that the Fountain Tire does occupy that 49 square feet by 48 square feet on the main floor of 1117. So that's where I've come up with those numbers. And then on my page 4, I have the most recent 1117, 1114 floor plan, which just shows again that the second floor space, which is not occupied by Fountain Tire, which is considered retail. And then the portion to the right, which would be the loft hair salon. And then above that would also be retail. So this is kind of where I've got my numbers from to justify what we had in the system. And then on my page 5, I just included, it shows the basement of what, this is a really old like floor plan. But it just shows that the basement is only included under that one that's smaller. That's why we have less square feet for the 1, 2, 3 fort. So that's just what I provided here to kind of clarify where we've come up with things. The only thing I would state that I'm probably going to review further is just to make sure we have the correct amount taken out for the stairwells lobby area that's associated with the 1117 and the 114, because we wouldn't, I don't know if there's any, because that would be common area of shared tenants versus the other garage where we wouldn't remove stuff. So that's kind of my presentation for the rebuttal and how I've come up with my number.
Mr. Story, any questions?
Yeah, just one. So, just from a very, let's say this, the common sense perspective would be it's not in the owner's interest to understate the gross leasable area, correct? Okay, so if what you're saying is true, then the owner is understating their leasable area to that tenant by 5,000 square feet. Doesn't that seem odd to you?
It all depends what they submit to us on mailers. We can't force them to they may not be including the basement. The tire area is what I'm assuming is the space that they're not including.
So,
but
what the owner is able to lease and what is under contract, should that not be the best indication of the gross leasable area of that asset?
Well, technically, the owner can put whatever they want. And it's not even on the mailer. They have not provided us with a lease.
They have, but the problem is you've merged the roles now. So they used to submit 2 different mailers.
Yes.
Right. So the information, the tire shop was on one mailer,
Mm-hmm.
and the information for the office was on the second mailer. And now actually there's a sort of an admin issue or a paperwork issue that happens because that role has been merged. You can't actually access the historical.
We can access it. There was nothing submitted for 123 Fort in 2017. And even going forward, I've looked at mailers, obviously it's posted, they don't include anything for Fountain Tire. So
but you have seen from our submission, you have seen the relevant section of the lease that suggests that the demise premise that they are leasing is 8,930 square feet. Is that fair?
that's just part, yes. And that's only like a snippet. Again, there's no floor plan to kind of state, based on my floor plan and based on our last inspection, they are occupying that space. So
if the owner could generate a rental rate on 13,000 square feet versus 8,900, don't you think they would?
Again, I'm not sure how they've come up with the lease. I know what space they occupy, so that's what we have associated with them.
Those are my questions on all things.
Mr. Simon?
No questions.
Mr. Hutchins?
Just for clarification, Brittany, so am I understanding that the garage area, 123 Fountain Tire, the square footage you're assessing could possibly include an indoor parking, I'll call it a parking garage if there's income being produced by it. Is that possible?
Yes. So we are considering that leasable area, which is most likely, if you look at my page 2, that blue area, the most south part of the property.
Yeah.
I have no clue how big it is. On the mailer, they state they have outdoor parking. They don't state indoor parking.
Mm-hmm.
So it would take an inspection to go and determine and measure how much space of it is. So right now, we don't have that as the indoor heated garage. We have it as part of the leasable area. And the other issue, I guess I should state, is so Fountain Tire, for business assessment, we don't have them in for 13,000 square feet. We have them in for something lower than that, but we still have to account for the fact that that space is leasable. If it's an indoor garage or storage, we don't know. The owner hasn't provided that to us, so.
Yeah, okay. So, if the actual physical Fountain Tire garage was less square footage and you did an inspection, you would assess, let's say, I'm being hypothetical here. Let's say they're renting out downtown indoor parking, 8 or 10 spots in there. You would do an income valuation on an indoor parking garage. Is that spots?
Yes.
Right?
What I would do is if I'm like, I plan on inspecting this just to make sure that everything is still what it should be, but I would lower, so if there's a portion of that 132 by 28 that should be indoor heated parking garage, I will remove that from the leasable and I would add a parking income stream.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
But without an inspection, we're not sure what it is. Okay,
I
thank
think it
you.
would benefit the owner to not have the parking income stream and just have the $12 by the square footage, but again, I don't know until I.
Yeah, but right now you're accounting or assessing that square footage as being part of 123 Fountain Avenue as a vehicle service garage.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, the floor is yours.
Very much. Okay, so here we are at 111 Fort. Again, this is the southeast corner of Fort and York. The property is comprised of two buildings constructed in 1910 and 1950. They are two separate premises, though they are attached. Now, the original improvement was a two-story wood frame building. This is the office section. It was built in 1910, and it was originally built as the Hudson's Bay mail order warehouse. It was converted to military barracks in 1939. The premise is presently best described as main floor retail. There's a hair salon on the main floor. It has typically been a hair salon. It's now a different hair salon than it was for many years, but it has been a hair salon for many years. There's office space on the second floor. There's a very small area that is used by the owner for her own purposes. But it is best described as chronically vacant on the second floor. So the gross leasable area related to this income stream is 10,216 square feet. And again, that's over 2 floors. The second building is the tire shop. It was built in 1950, best described as a vehicle service garage. And the leasable area, which we've heard a fair bit about now, is 8,930 square feet. And this is confirmed by the lease. That is the GLA under contract. The site has M multiple use zoning. It's rectangular in shape. It's a total size of 22,768 square feet by the city's records, giving it a relatively low land to building ratio of approximately 1.6 to 1. Okay. Now that is considered inadequate for present day vehicle service related use, but again, it is somewhat atypical in that it's an office building connected to a tire shop in the middle of the downtown. So it's one of these properties that it's sort of a vestige of the past. I think it's the best way to describe it. Now, in terms of the office retail income stream, the rentable area is calculated again to be 10,216 square feet, with 5,100 square feet of leasable on the main and 5,116 square feet on the second floor. So the department is using a rent of $12.54 per square foot. So we believe that is quite high. So and the main floor contract rent equated to it was sort of difficult to calculate, but I believe it was about $880 at the reference date. And the second floor again was over 90% vacant. So we looked to the market to determine what was appropriate. So I've included some rents here in the general vicinity, and they do range from $6.50 to $10.50. Now that $6.50 range would typically be called more suburban than downtown. So I think that in hindsight that would be sort of out of the general area. But again, I did point to the fact that my third comp is the same as the assessors, and it's at $10 per square foot. It's right down the street. However, it is a superior building. It's not attached or influenced by either a hair salon or a vehicle service garage. It includes 4 parking stalls, and it does have a reasonably decent loading door at the back. So that's at $10 per square foot. So even with the consideration of that $6.50 taken out, we see an average of $8.87, a median of $9. If the superior property right down the street is renting for $9 seems appropriate. with. So we're using $9 per square foot on the main. Again, the second floor of this property has experienced chronic vacancy with a very small area being used by the owner as a private office. So we've looked to what we'll call upper floor rents in the vicinity, and again, we come to an average of $773 and a median of $748. So based on this analysis, we have applied $8 to the second floor and $9 to the main. There's no elevator, so typically the second floor in a two-story walk-up such as this would command a slightly lower rental rate. So this makes sense, giving us a gross lease or a net market rent per annum across the entirety of the office stream of $8.50, with a market rent per annum on a net basis of $86,828, and we have applied that in our calculation. Now, for the purposes of this report, the vacancy allowance is estimated to be 10%. I think that's likely reasonably low, given the history of 50% of the office stream being 90% vacant since at least 2014. It has been actively marketed. I've got some photos to show the marketing documents or the signage that's been on the building going back to at least 2014. So given the fact that there has been some issues with renting the second floor, 10% is applied. Shortfall rate does not appear to be in dispute. Again, we do continue to apply an allowance of 7% for non-recovered expenses. You've heard that, so I will ask that my argument on that point carry forward. Now, I have included an input called other income. So I think this is where we were talking about the heated garage. The owner rents 6 spaces at a rent of $50 per month. So we have added in $3,600 of extra income that has been applied. That is reported. So I believe that indoor heated space, and I suspect what's happening from the assessment department's perspective is that extra space is being attributed to the vehicle service garage. However, it's actually being used for the tenants of the office space. I think that's the most likely scenario here. In terms of the cap rate, it is at 8.4%. We would typically use 8.5 or something of that nature for a property of this vintage with some of these issues, but 8.4 for the purpose of this report is accepted. So if you follow me to page 10, the income summary for the office leads us to an indicated market value rounded to $829,000 for the 2022 assessment year. Okay, now the vehicle service garage. So we've heard here the main issue that we have is that we believe that the leasable area is overstated. The owner suggests to us that 4,500 square feet is used for the bays, and the building has 4,430 square feet of leasable area. Now that is how they calculate the rentable area under contract at 8,930 square feet. That is included in my brief. We're not disputing the $10.28 per square foot overall. That's consistent with vehicle service garages, and I believe that's actually consistent with the one that we looked at earlier in this document. So for the purpose of this report, that 1028 is not disputed. However, we have adjusted the leasable area. Vacancy at 4% is not disputed. The shortfall is appropriate. Again, we do continue to apply the 7% non-recoverable expenses, and we don't dispute the capitalization rate. So with that being said, the income value on the VSG portion rounded for the 2022 assessment year based on April 1, 2018 ought not to exceed $1,140,000. Now, if you follow me, please, to page 14. This is the consolidated income valuation summary comprising of both the VSG and the retail component. And we see that when taken together, the value at 2022, based on what we've submitted here for the retail component of the vehicle service garage, ought not to exceed $1,969,000. We do respectfully submit that the 2022 realty assessment should not exceed $1,969,000. My appendices, I have the My rental comps for the main floor and office. Okay. Index 3, again, that's the one that we've put more weight on. It's a good proxy for value. Again, it's the same owner, similar vintage. Aesthetically, it's superior, and it also includes parking in that rent. So if it's a 10, then 9 for our subject seems reasonable. Index 5 is reasonably good as well in terms of what I would call my 2 best, but I would certainly put more weight on comp 3. In terms of the upper floor, we see that there's some what we'll call Class B office space throughout the downtown, where not to delve too far into this, but there was a flight to quality in the after the vast amount of office space came onto the market with Truro Square. So it was a tenant's market at the reference date. So $8 per square foot, based on our analysis, is reasonable for the upper floor. So now the balance of my brief, I believe, is just income and expense. Okay. So I made reference to this in page. Appendix, and I don't have it numbered here, but you can see there is marketing photos on the building going back as far as 2014. And they do talk about the heated indoor parking from 18 to present, though they don't mention that on the signs previously. So that might be what's giving rise to some discrepancy in the square footage. So again, we do suggest that the value of this asset at the reference date not exceed $1,969,000. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Santucci, questions of Mr. Story?
Yes. So, looking at your market rents, you've included index number 2, which is located outside the downtown and has the lowest rent. So it's kind of an outlier.
It's a bit of an outlier, yeah, and I believe I spoke to that. Yeah.
And I just wanted to reference, so part of my rebuttal brief on the very last page just shows that index number 4 is actually a basement rent.
Right, and I did note that, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
I think I wrote it on your page. If you look at so that's an interesting property. It's partially owner occupied.
Mm-hmm.
It's a denture, so the main rents are fairly high, but they're book rents. There's an upper level there that I think equates to $848. I calculated it out at. So I think you're correct. I believe that I've got the floor. That's probably wrong in our system, and I will go back and change that. That being said, there is a rent of $848 there, so it's not completely out of bounds. Though you're correct, there is a slight error there to the tune of about 12 cents per square foot.
So for your second story rents, are any of those buildings under 4 stories with walk-ups?
No, these are not walk-ups. These would be superior properties with elevators, better amenities, and generally considered superior. I think what I'm trying to point out here is that in the market for this type of space, if you're looking for this type of space, you wouldn't pay more to be above a hair salon and next to a tire shop if you could be in a superior property that has better amenities, that has an elevator, that has more prestige. So in showing you the universe for these properties, I think that $8 is certainly reasonable.
Would you agree, because I reviewed all these mailers, that every one of these rents is the lowest rent in these office towers?
I'm not sure. I don't know if I can't confirm if that's true. That's certainly, no, that would be news to me if that's true.
Just because I reviewed, for example, 201 Portage, every rent in that building is above $12, with the majority 15 plus.
So that's 10,000 square feet, though. We're talking about a 5,000 square foot. So
I'm just saying
economies of scale
rents,
do come into play, though, right? So
yeah, I'm just saying that the rents that you've picked here are the lowest rents available in these buildings, and they're the only rent that is anywhere near that. I'm just saying that they seem very low compared to what the market is commanding. Like on average, all these buildings, the average rents are over $11.
but these rents are these are actual rents.
Yeah, they're actual rents,
Okay.
but they are the only rents in each of those buildings that are below $11.
That would be news to me. But,
So on your page 11, You have a snippet of the lease here. Did you review the entire lease?
I did, I have the list, yeah.
So my issue is with this 8,930 square feet. If you turn to my page 2 on my rebuttal, even if you take 90 by 35, which is the fountain tire, you take 90 by 35, which is the second floor, you take the 1,973, which is the basement. If you take 28 by 85, which is being less than probably what it is for that other fountain tire space, and then the fountain tire at 49 times 48 square feet, it comes up with 13,029 square feet as fountain tire. This is what has been provided to us. So
Sorry,
like
this is based on these,
on my rebuttal page 2, I'm calculating what space fountain tire occupies.
Okay.
We do have that they occupy 13,029 square feet.
and that's fine, but how old are these drawings?
Well, but they occupy that space. The person who was in there in 2013 confirmed that they occupy those spaces on this
You
diagram.
mentioned that you have a different leasable area for the VA.
Yes, that is true.
What is that leasable area?
That would be, I don't have it on file here, and it has to be updated, and I am going to be updating that. But based on the fact is that I just don't understand, I understand that the lease says this, but they provided no lease to us. What they,
Leases are not typically provided, right? Typically
Yes.
leases
Well,
are provided in full.
but would they not apply it in the income and expense questionnaire that we request from them?
I
Because,
think they have. I think the main issue is that they did not want to have these two roles merged. They were happy how things were. There was a supplementary issue. So this has been a bit of a mess for this owner to untangle. And I will suggest to you that it would be completely illogical for an owner who's leasing this premise to understate the leasable area. The leasable area is the primary function of the driver of the income that they derive from this
Yes.
property. So if
But what I'm
they
saying is-
had 13,000 square feet to lease, it makes no sense that they would suggest that it's 8,930.
but then shouldn't it have been provided to us today with a full lease that shows that what we have on file is incorrect?
So I'm showing you the relevant section of the lease.
But that doesn't show me the floor plan or anything. That just tells me a number. And based on what I have on file and what's been provided to us, I cannot correct it based on this. And
Well, I don't
in fact,
know what you have on file, and I see drawings that appear to be very old. I don't know the origins of them. This is the
that's
first time
from a
I've seen it.
permit that was submitted. So that's what was submitted to the city. And I'm just concerned that on the mailer submitted to us, there's nothing that says anything about fountain tire. So
Right,
technically I could have gone for non-compliance
because
because they
the-
haven't submitted it.
Because the fountain tire mailer was supplied on a separate mailer. The owner is not used to submitting the office plus the vehicle service garage on the same mailer. That role merger was not, they did not agree with that. So
So since they didn't agree, they chose not to include it.
no,
Like,
I don't think they chose not to include it. I don't know. I can't see what's in your system. What I can tell you is that merging these roles and issuing that supplementary in 2016 has caused problems for this owner. And now part of the reason why we're here today is because we're trying to sort of untangle what has gone on here. But I can tell you that the leasable area in the fountain tire is not 13,000 square feet. It's 8,930.
just, it would have been nice if someone would have provided us an updated floor plan to show 8,940 so that we could adjust it if that is the case, but nothing has been provided to us. So that's my statement on what I calculate from what we have on file. It gives me
And I'm
13,029
going to
square
suggest
feet.
it would be the leasable area under contract. It would be unlikely that the actual leasable area would be higher than the leasable area under contract. That just is logical.
That's all I have for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, let's deal with Mr. Story. Let's deal with what you just said. Have you confirmed the leasable area? Or are you taking the income declaration as the leasable area, the contract?
Confirmed it with the owner and the property manager.
Have you physically confirmed the square footage that's being declared?
No, I have not measured it.
Okay, So the assessor is saying it's around approximately 25,000 square feet on all three addresses. The previous agent said that it was about 24,200 square feet. And you're coming in today and saying it's 19,000, let's say 200 square feet. So we've got the assessor who theoretically measured this building, presenting that evidence. But just for me to understand, you're saying that the number that the owner declared should be the accepted square footage of the building?
Owner would be the person who knows most about the leasable area in this property. I think that, yes, I think that's safe to say. I don't know that the assessment department has measured this property, and I'm looking at what the previous agent from the other firm has submitted. I think that they've deferred to the cities. I don't think that they looked into this issue, from what I can tell. That's my guess, but
Yeah, okay. So maybe it's time, Ms. Santucci, you said you had blueprints. Have you physically confirmed that you just stated a bunch of measurements for the different buildings? Are you confident that that square footage is correct? Yeah, Ms. Santucci,
Oh,
yes.
I'm confident with the 13,000, yes, because
Okay,
square footage just doesn't disappear. I
Yeah.
can measure it from the aerial as well, so.
okay, thank you. My next question is, on page 14, Mr. Story, what is your blended cap rate for the three income streams or two income streams you've developed? What is your blended cap rate?
blended cap rate calculates to 7.62%.
7.62, okay. And my next question is, let's deal with these parking spaces. I believe you stated that the owner declared income of 6 parking spaces at $50 a month for indoor heated parking on just off of Broadway and 4th Street. I think you have experience with parking income and parking spaces rented in that area off of Broadway. What would from your knowledge, what would the average rental rate for a surface parking lot off of Broadway be in that area
So
per month?
Right. So you're suggesting that this is far below market. I think that's what you're getting at, and I agree. But I think that may be a way to provide a benefit to the tenants. They could just as easily include that space in the rent. It seems to be a discounted rent for the existing tenant. So
yeah, that's where I'm going. They're saying that they're making $300 a month on 6 parking spaces. I don't know how many square feet that was. They're taking that off the leasable area, I believe. Would that be fair? I don't know if you can answer that question.
I don't know that they're taking it off the leasable area. I know what the leasable area is according to the owner. Is that causing the discrepancy between us and the city? Perhaps, I don't know.
So they're by their calculation, they're reducing the leasable area. And then I think you're agreeing with me that probably in that area, that declaration of income is considerably understated.
Well, it's below market, but if it's included as a part of the rent, and that's called an anti-attrition measure, perhaps. So we know that this building has problems with vacancy. So in order to maintain tenancies, that they have to offer a below market parking rent. That's consistent with market behavior. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
What is a surface parking lot rate off of Broadway in downtown? Would it be $185 a month, for instance?
At the reference state, sure, you'd be
just going on your experience.
Sure, probably $200, perhaps. It depends, right? I understand what you're saying. It is below.
Yeah. What would indoor heated be? What would heated indoor off Broadway be?
That would certainly be higher. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that that the income should be bumped up to reflect the market value of that income from the parking spaces?
Well,
or market?
No, I think that they've been very forthcoming in suggesting that they are collecting this extra income. But that might be subtending the rents that they're achieving. That might be persuading their tenants to stay in that property. So I don't think it's completely fair to they're not renting it to the market. They're renting it to their tenants. So
Are you sure about that?
Fairly certain, yeah.
Because the sign says heated parking spaces for rent. So that to me,
that's part of the office space for these. That's
okay.
Right. That's part of the advertisement for office space.
Okay. Now let's look at the assessor's aerial view of the building, the loft on page. Where are we? Page 2 of her presentation. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4. You see that surface parking behind the loft building, the address 111.
Do I see the? Okay, yeah. So the behind where it says 111, that's where you drive in to the heated parking. That's a driveway.
So there are vehicles parked on either side of that entrance. So that means there is more parking space, surface parking space, because you could still access the indoor parking space. So is that income also generated that's not declared, or is that assigned parking to the 111?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Okay, so those 4 spots are not declared. Is that right?
Right,
they're not assessed.
Those are four spots, but that's a driveway. That's
right.
That's where you drive into the indoor heated parking.
But
so I see what you're saying. There clearly are. It appears that there's a car up against the building behind 111.
Yeah,
that area, that's a driveway.
But then there's 2 more on the Main Street side. Pardon me, the Broadway side. So I see 3 vehicles parked there, and I see also the clear access into the indoor parking area from what I'm seeing.
Sorry. Okay. So if we're looking at the second picture. Okay. So our property, you see where it says 222?
No, 111.
That's a separate property. Is that what you're referencing?
At the back of 111, there's an entrance lane that would go into 1, 2, 3, the 123 4th Street address. So that this space, this surface area is an entrance into apparently indoor heated parking. But there are 3 vehicles parked in that surface area that would still allow for a car to drive into the do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that there are 2 cars parked to the yeah, okay, yes.
And there's one against the building.
Driveway.
And then there's one against the building. So there's actually 3 vehicles there, which still permits access. But that doesn't seem, you don't know what those parking spaces, or whether they were assigned to the tenants in 111.
No, I have no idea.
Okay, or workers. Okay. Then my next question is, you stated chronic vacancy. Now that on the second floor, would that be for 117 4th Street?
I suppose the assessor is calling that 117. We just call that the second floor of 111 Fort. Yeah, entire set.
Okay, so we've got 2 addresses. Does the second floor run all the way through? I think somebody stated that 111 is the hair salon, and the upstairs is used as part of the hair salon.
Second floor is vacant. It's 5,100 square feet approximately on each floor. The second floor has been chronically vacant since at least 2013. The main floor has for all recent memory, has been it's been 2 different hair salons, but it's been a hair salon on the main. The second floor has been vacant.
Okay, so the hair salon occupies only the corner lot. Does 1, 2, and the main floor of 117 is actually a service garage? Is that fair? Have I got this right?
Part of the So part of the main. Okay, so what they're showing is 117 has some bays. There are 2 bays there. You can see them on the bottom of.
What is upstairs there?
That's the vacant office area.
So that's actually one floor footprint going all the way, spanning both addresses, or is it divided?
It would be spanning both addresses.
So maybe I misunderstood, but so Fountain Tire isn't using any of that upstairs space above those garages for office space?
They're using it for storage. There's some storage right above there. I believe there are photos here. It's not leasable. You can see.
Okay.
So see on page 6, there's clearly a board with nails sticking out of the ceiling and exposed.
So the second story does not span both addresses. Is that right? It sounds like that. Let's
I don't know exactly how large that second floor storage is right above. Yeah, I'm not sure.
The second floor storage is actually part of 123.
So the vacant chronic area is not 5,100 square feet. It's not the footprint of the main floor. It's above 111 plus possibly going into above 117. Would that be? So it's not 5,100 square feet of vacant area. Is that what that be?
They've been advertising 5,163 square feet of second floor office space for some time. I have that in my brief. In 2014 and 2015, they're calling it 4,770. In 16 and 17, they're calling it 5,163, and that's consistent with the.
Yeah,
with the
I'm just wondering how they can say it's all vacant when they're actually using storage on part of that second story area.
Right. I believe I misspoke. I think that second storage is actually that is above what we're calling, what the city is calling 123.
The entire of 1114 is vacant on the second floor, and it is, we agree it's the 50.
That's not in our
Okay, but what about 117? They're two separate.
One.
Pardon me?
It's all one. So
It is
even
all
though they
one.
have two different addresses, the whole entire, from the inspection lasted, it is just one.
Okay, the second floor reflects the footprint of the main floor. Okay, of both buildings, so 111 and 117. Okay. So that's the chronic vacancy that you're referring to, Mr. Story.
Yes, second
That
floor
area.
office space. That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a picture here, what's going on there. All right. Okay. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Much.
I have no questions. Either party want summation?
Good on that one. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I think we've all went over it, so.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the last one on the docket, which is 7 Pioneer Avenue. So whenever you're ready, you can take us through that property.
Mr. Chair, so this is file number 21-313, roll number 12097-803-735, and the address we have just applied to this is Pioneer Avenue. So it's a surface parking lot. We have 96 outdoor stalls and a land area of 27,811 square feet. So if you go to my page 2, you can see the parking lot from above. It's quite a large parcel in the downtown. And just the exterior photo at the bottom. So we have the request for income expense. And that's all been received. We have subject sale history. So the subject property sold in 2017 and then sold again in 2019, whichever removed the value, it's post-reference. So for the lot details, it's just slightly different than ours. They have 99 spaces versus our 96. Services available, power plugs, opening 24/7 access. So page 4, we have the 96 stalls times our modeled 103.50. Gives us a net operating income of $119,232 and our modeled capitalization rate of 4.5%. So we have an estimated value of $2,650,000. On the bottom, I've included comparables. So again, they range, I think our lowest one is $90.01 for the stabilized. And it goes as high, there's obviously one for 300, but I would say the average there is more of the 146 is 88. So these are just comparable ones, somewhat in the Exchange District. On page 5, I have the subject property actual rates as of the reference date. So it just shows $2 per hour, $12 daily max, $3 I think for evening, $3 weekend, and $215 monthly. So income value summary is on page 6, and I'll flip all the way to page 9, which shows the what is submitted to us for the income and expense. So they've provided their net parking is $212,000, and they have some expenses provided, and they show, I guess they didn't calculate it here, but their NOI is around 91,000. And then they've provided us with those same rates at the bottom there. I think that's the end of the income and expense questionnaire. So another thing to note is obviously this is a nice size lot, rectangle. So I also looked at to see if the land value would be fair if I divided the income by it. So I divided the income value by the land, and it works out to about 29 per square foot, which is fair for its location. So it's a good located lot just off of Main Street near Portage. So my recommendation today is just to maintain the 2022 assessed value of $2,650,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Story, questions?
Thank you. Okay, so you're familiar with this property. Is it safe to say that this lot services the Bell MTS office tower?
It is run by a company, so I would assume majority would probably park there, but it's open to anybody.
It's the same owner? It was purchased for parking for that office tower? Is that, you aware of that?
Potentially, but again, it's run by a parking service, so I can't say that it's, I don't have a list of who's there.
Okay, now you've included that there was a sale, but that is post-reference, so why was that included?
Well, I just included that there was a sale. I didn't have to put the price. I just put that it's sold again.
And there was a sale in 17 for 1.7. Okay, and there's also, if I look up on page 3, there was a sale in 2016, you're saying?
Oh, that's just when the mailer would have been like sent out, but no, the only sales we have on file are the 17 and the newest one, which I can't speak to.
So it says 2017 sale, 2016 sale.
I'm not sure why that date shows up for the sales mailer, but I only have the 2 sales on file, so.
That's fine. All right. Now, we don't disagree with the monthly rent per stall, but I guess my question is, where does that 4.5% cap rate come from?
It's just our model cap rate that we've used for the 2020 reassessment for parking lots in the downtown.
And do you have anything to support that 4.5% cap rate?
Do not have anything in my rate provided to support that.
Is there anything in the market that supports a 4.5% cap rate on park?
Obviously, reviewed some parking sales before we do the reassessment, so we do review sales to kind of determine what capitalization rates to use. But I don't have that in my.
You said that it's 95.29 per square foot.
That's what it works out to if you divide the income by the land.
And you said that that's a fair rate per square foot?
I would say so. It's near Portage and Main. It's a larger lot that could be developed. So.
Okay. Do you have any land sales that support that rate?
I didn't include land sales. I just spoke to that. But the income value I'm defending here is fair. So.
But just to be clear, there's no cap rate evidence and there's no land sale evidence to support the resulting value. Is that fair to say?
No, I didn't include any land sales.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
So a cap rate of 4.5% is pretty low, even though rates are low. How does the city make the determination that that's a fair cap rate for a surface lot?
So we review sales and if we can analyze cap rates for properties. We don't include that in the brief, unfortunately, but like for something like a municipal board or something, we would obviously include our sales. But it is on the lower end of a cap rate, I would say.
And is that because a big piece of land like this might be redevelopable and other things, so it's sort of get an income while you wait for
Yeah.
an opportunity?
And it is, we have modeled that for the entire downtown. This parcel just happens to be what would we consider also developable. It's currently used as a parking lot.
So if it wasn't developable, there's no development and potential.
Potentially then you could
pavement
adjust the cap.
So any surface lot in that area would have a 4.5% cap.
Everyone, yes, like we don't.
Okay. And surface lots, they take a lot of upkeep. There's a lot of expenditures that required to maintain them.
Everything, we don't really see the true, leases between the owners and Impark, but I would assume like there's the insurance, there's snow removal, they need to paint or fix anything. Typically,
Pavement maybe.
they pay like management fees and whatnot, but.
I'm saying repavement perhaps too.
Yeah, like repavement and stuff. I'm not sure how often that would be done, but usually they're like a lower risk.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Mr. Hutchins?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Santucci, page 3, there's a lot details that says 99 spaces. Where is that excerpt from?
That is from the website of the parking management company. I haven't adjusted anything just because the last time we were out, we inspected and we had 96 stalls.
Okay,
So I wasn't going to change what the last person in our department had on file.
okay, thank you. And then the income statement, on page, what are we looking at here? Page 10. Is that filled out by Impark or is that by the owner?
I don't know. It looks to be the owner based on the signature, but that would be, I think the owner, not Impark or Indigo filling that out, so.
So Impark provides them with these numbers. Do you think, is that the way it works?
I'm not sure. They're all different. Some of them have where they just get like a lump sum payment from the owner, but it looks to me that the owner filled this out, and I would assume it would be provided to them by Impark then, or any of the owner's expenses, but I can't speak to.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the Impark's commission is deducted from the income on this declaration.
No, they only have the parking net income provided to us.
Parking net, oh yeah, okay. 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 That is all my questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Summary, either party wants summary?
I'd like to present my brief.
Sorry. What I noticed, I guess, Mr. Story, is that your NOI is exactly the same as the city, so we can concentrate on the cap rate.
Only talking about cap rate, yeah.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. So we've established where we are here. We've got the property on Pioneer that is generally servicing the office towers that are known as the Bell MTS towers. Again, we are looking at cap rate only. So we believe that a cap rate of 4.5% is too low. Now, I do appreciate that there is it is difficult to determine a market cap rate for these properties because they don't tend to sell based on a capitalized income stream. Now, there is a general sense that, and Mr. Diamond, you pointed out very correctly, that there are expenses incurred in expense ratios in owning these properties. Now, the idea that a surface parking lot is in a holding period until the next higher and better use comes along is generally true. However, in order to determine the cap rate, we have to look at the potential rate of returns on other investments and we'll call the liquidity of a property like this. So 4.5% we believe to be too low. We have applied a cap rate of 5.25%, giving us an indicated value of $2,271,000. Now, we had to look to the market for, and this is again reasonably difficult because we're looking at land sales, but what we did, I provided you with our parking study. It's on page 16, the first appendices, the third entry down. And you will see that in interviewing a family who typically purchase surface parking lots and hold them as a long-term play in terms of putting them in a holding period. We have a sale in 2015 that occurred at Gary Street. That's our most, that's our best proxy for value. It's not perfect, but it does support our value because we see that sale was $84.78, though it is smaller. So adjusting for economies of scale and time value, a reasonable comparable adjustment to our subject would be somewhere in the range of $80 per square foot to $85 per square foot, as evidenced by that sale. So that would indicate a range of value somewhere between $2,225,000 and $2,364,000. So at 5.25, we do fall within that range. Again, I do appreciate the difficulty of determining the market cap, but I believe that we should use a check on value, and we have done that by looking at our closest and best property that isn't intended to be redeveloped right away, but rather held and used as a parking lot. So with all that being said, we've applied a cap rate of 5.25, giving us an indicated market value of $2,271,000, and we do respectfully submit that that's an appropriate figure for the purpose of this assignment. Thank you. And you do have my my parking study, which should have provided. Yeah.
So just is that in index number 5?
I believe it's index number 3. Let me just
3.
Hold on 1 second. It's the one on Gary. So it's page 16, index number 3. It's 18,000 square feet. It sold in May of 15 for $1,526,000,
Right.
$84.78 per square foot.
Is there a summary somewhere?
Yeah, it says purchased using a government tender process.
What page?
That's right.
Do you have a page?
Oh, it's that was 16, but it appears to be 17. So if we account for the cover page in that PDF, it's page 17. It's the third one.
I see all the sales, but just
There's a comments box at the. So that's what we have.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Brittany, questions of Mr. Story?
So in your brief, though, you haven't included any other land sales in the downtown?
No other land sales in the downs. Well, not in the brief, but we've provided a 66-page parking study that supports.
But not like a chart or anything in here. Okay. And then was there a cap rate determined on the 155 Gary Street?
Not sure. No, I think that was purchased as land. And again, this is the issue with developing cap rates for parking lots. They're not typically transacting based on a capitalized value of the present income, but rather on a per square foot basis. So no, I don't have a cap rate evidence, and I don't think the city does either. So I think that's the issue when we're dealing with these surface parking lots.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diamond?
Mr. Story, a surface parking lot basically requires a lot less upkeep and maintenance than another properties that have buildings on them. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And with low interest rates the way we have it right now,
Sure.
you're looking at a pretty low risk investment.
Yeah, they are low risk, but they're not no risk. So they are lower risk to be certain, but they're also lower. They're lower reward too. So it's proportionate, right?
Well, that might be, but there might be higher reward too if there's potential down the road. You're paid while you wait for redevelopment.
Absolutely. Right. So in that perspective, we have to look at the band investments. We have to look at what comparable or less riskier, more liquid investments might net us. So
yeah, but like a GIC would pay you maybe 1.5%.
Absolutely.
So 4.5% from a parking lot, which is also a low risk.
Right.
Looks pretty good.
It does, but it's the GIC is a lot more liquid to be certain, and it's a lot less intensive.
Only liquidity, it might not be liquidity, lock up for 5 years.
Sure, but that's right. Yeah, we have more control over that investment, right? So
And, I'm not sure how the city gets the 4.5. I mean, I can see that if I was investing in a parking lot. It might look pretty good from the point of view with other low-risk investments are available.
Sure, yeah.
And you don't really have any parking lots. So, and I'm not blaming you. They don't sell, as you said.
We do have the one, and
Yeah.
that's, in terms of this whole exercise, we've got one, between the city and myself, we've got one to look at, and it's sold for $84 per square foot. It is smaller, it does support our value, so,
But it might not have the redevelopment potential either. This, same question is.
well,
Because it's
actually, I think that the one on Gary is probably more likely to be redeveloped, because the owner on Pioneer needs parking to service the office tower. So if we get into a conversation about highest and best use, just sort of on a tangent, the highest and best use of that Pioneer lot might be servicing the tenants of the office tower. So there might be more development potential on Gary down the road.
And exactly where did you get your 5.25% cap rate from?
That's again, it's like an internal model that we're using. We're saying, well, 4.5 is too low. So I agree. They're theoretical in nature, but ours is the material difference between our cap rate that we've applied in the cities is that we've supported ours with a land sale value where there's no support for the city's cap rates. That's our perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchings?
Yeah, just one quick one, Mr. Story. You provided that cap rate comparison, but none of those comparisons were in the downtown area. Is that fair?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you're.
You provided that analysis of those sales of land and came up with a cap rate comparison. Is that?
No, it's a land sale comparison, and the one on Gary is certainly in the downtown.
But not on. Okay, I'll put it this way: is the subject property in a superior location to Gary Street?
They would both be considered the central business district. They would be reasonably comparable. Yeah.
Okay, and where on Gary Street did that? What was the location of that?
I believe that's the mid 100 block. Let me just put it up here. I think it's 150, but
Are we south of Broadway or north?
we would be south of. Sorry, we would be north of Broadway.
Just off Broadway, would that be right? Okay. I can't find the exact location here.
It might actually be Gary in New York, but let me just double check.
Okay, Gary in York. Okay, we're not that far away. All right. Okay. That is my only question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Story, just one question for you.
Sure.
Did you ever look at what they sell for per stall at all?
Per stall, no, because that again, that's the issue. That then we'd be looking to capitalize the potential income. Typically, they're not sold based on the income generated. They're typically sold based on some future higher and better use. So, no.
Okay. Summary, either party?
No, I think
No? Okay. So we have heard all the items scheduled this morning or this afternoon.
Mr. Chair,
And,
Mr.
the
Chair,
hearing is now-
Ron,
What? Robert?
Mr. Chair, Ron, could I ask for a quick recess? I have a clerical question before you close.
I'm sorry, Robert?
Before you close the hearing, Ron, I have a clerical question regarding this hearing. If I could get clarification before we close it. Yeah.
Clerical?
Clerical.
Okay.
Clerical. Maybe we should discuss it in recess.
Do you want to have a recess?
Yes, quickly for one. I'm confused about something on the docket. Yes, please.
Okay. Tara? Can we have call the hearing back to order? We have satisfied our clerical situation and therefore we have heard all the items scheduled and the hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.